my buddy, who he appears to be a white man. If you just if you don't look closely, if you don't come up on him, but his father's black and he identifies as a black man.
Yeah.
And so I found it interesting that growing up, there'd be times when we'd be out and about and people would interact with him like in a very like you're one of us type of way.
Yeah.
And what's up with your boy? you know?
So you mainly saying that we got political misfits in the house from Radio Sputnik, my fellow Russian agents, sitting here doing Putin's work,
Oh, shout out.
Yeah.
Let's make sure you're registered because Biden and them might come after you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm right here on the doorstep of Cory Booker's kingdom here in Newark, New Jersey.
Oh,
so
God. Yeah.
I'm like right on the city. I literally live on the city limit line of Newark and Harrison, and right by the Ironbound now. So as of about a month ago. So. But yeah, man, that's something else. Right by the New York Red Bulls MLS stadium. I literally live next door to the New York Red Bulls.
So how many seats are in that stadium?
Like 30-something thousand.
30,000.
They call it Red Bull Arena. Yeah. So
got you.
Anyway,
who paid for that?
Who paid for it? Yeah.
Who paid for that stadium? Was that independently funded or taxpayers?
Hell no, man. Like, what do you fucking? Why would I spend my money if I'm a billionaire on this shit? Just like get these taxpayers to pay for it. Why not?
Look, when you're a billionaire, you don't need money anymore, right?
But it's kind of weird though. It's kind of weird. It's like, hey, but like there's other cities that like they really want a team, so they're gonna show how much they want it. Oakland doesn't want to build us a new arena, new stadium. Bump them, man.
So speaking of stadiums, I'm here in East Point, Georgia.
Oh yeah, man.
So sister city south of Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
And so we had the Braves leave my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay. And there was, I think Bloomberg did this study about how the Braves, every single place that they were with Liberty Media, that they basically like ruined the local economy. And I think there really should be a follow-up because Cobb County had like a $90 million education shortfall or something like that.
Wow.
And they ended up giving the Braves like $500 million through different like programs and incentives and so on and so forth. And it's like, y'all were defunding education.
Yeah.
But you brought the Braves,
right?
And it's interesting how that stuff works. So I will say that it appears that the development, not just the stadium but everything around it, seems to be successful if you can quantify that without looking at the books.
Yep.
But I will say there's something wrong with the system that finds the money for the Braves, but had a budget shortfall for the schools. Like there's something wrong there, right?
But come on, Joshua. You gotta understand. Cobb County. We gotta build our brand. Project that to the country, man, to the world. So it's like it's gonna all trickle down. You know what I'm saying? Like we come in there. Like these poor people are gonna get jobs serving hot dogs, right? And then they're gonna use all that money to be able to invest in their kids' education and invest back in the community. I mean, not pay bills and payday loans.
Yeah,
loan shark, motherfuckers. But I know. Obviously, man, it's like it's insane. I mean, this stadium here, I think, was a joint project. Like Newark, definitely had a role in it too, even though it's technically in Harrison. Like on the the river here, and it's Cory Booker had a role, and Sharp James before him. There was a great documentary, just a quick sidebar, about the mayor race. I think it was like 2002 maybe, between Cory Booker and Sharp, or it might have been 2006 for Cory Booker and Sharp James. And Sharp James is like literally a caricature, just like a slick kind of like big city mayor. Just like he literally got this cat got convicted, man. And the thing they got him for was he was hooking his girlfriend up with like no bid land in Newark, and then letting her flip it for come
on, bro. Like at that point, sleazy stuff is going on, but like lately it seems like a lot of these guys are just kind of like whatever, man. Like they're the level of arrogance is just astounding.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and on the stadium thing, it's not even like the system being broken is obviously far beyond the reach of just how it's broken in sports. But in Washington a few years ago, when Boeing threatened to leave and they wanted $9 billion in tax breaks to stay, just $9 billion, no big deal in 1 year, and all those jobs. The governor waited till 11:59 p.m. to pass it and cut it all from schools. So, again, we'll find $9 billion for one company, which, by the way, makes more drones and weapons than they do planes. We'll find the $9 billion for them, but we got to take it from somewhere, and it's going to have to be your kids. No big deal, right? Like, that's a fair trade. Yeah.
No, that's not it. He wrote a book.
Love the Midnight Bill. Love the Midnight Bill. That's, more. So many states do that.
There he is. Chris Christie ended up being the one prosecuting him, that great crusader against, corruption himself. But the guy who shut down the effing, George Washington Bridge. But yeah, such a crusader. Dude, he's on sports radio, by the way, just like
Chris Christie.
Yeah, he goes on a lot. I mean, now WFAN, New York City, and he's friends with Craig Carton, the loan shark dude who still owes victims $5 million for all the sports bets and shit he ripped people off with. Like, he'd be getting paid like loans to help him with and he starts making a lot of money. So he ended up doing 1 year in prison, and then of course WFAN hires him back to do their 2 to 7, drive.
Who else would do the 2 to 7?
Yeah, plenty of people, man. Plenty of people. I mean, they kicked Bart Stott off of there, to bring back Mike Francesa for 4 months, and then Bart Scott ended up going back to Bart Scott's with ESPN now, so like ESPN New York, and he's on the morning show sometimes. Yeah.
I mean, Bart Scott's like a pretty
anyway. Yeah,
I mean, his analysis is cool, but like it's like what you need in those types of shows is like somebody with a name, somebody that fans connect with, or whatever, and that's Bart Scott. I mean,
absolutely. Absolutely, man. So yeah, real quick, I'm sorry, I've been messing around, but yeah, this is what the guy was here. So we're talking about just corrupt politicians, real quick, and in a way, this guy had a big role in helping get the big MLS stadium built here. That's not on the same level of NFL and stuff, but he also had a big role in getting the Prudential Center built in Newark, which is the home of the NHL's New Jersey Devils and the Seton Hall Pirates men's basketball Big East program, which is about a mile from here. But anyways, former mayor guilty of fraud in Newark sales, 2 blocks from the wood paneled office where Sharp James ran New Jersey's largest city for 20 years. The former mayor made a stealthy exit through the back door of the federal courthouse on Wednesday after a jury found him guilty for fraud of conspiring to sell city-owned properties to a former companion at a fraction of the price. Mr. James, 72, had built a formidable political machine. Yeah, it was like he was getting people fired from their city jobs for not like repping the Sharp James shirts. Like, so they'd be at a rally and they weren't repping like the things. They're like, you're out of here, man. Just had to go. A formidable. I love this. A formidable political machine. Like whatever.
Yo, I can't lie. This sounds like Atlanta politics.
Yeah. So I mean, we got to hear some Keisha Lance Bottom stuff. But
man, don't give me. Look, I've already been canceled in a couple of circles. Come on, man.
So. Yeah, I do want to make the point though. It sounds like I don't want to just make it seem like we're just piling on. Like there are hella more white, like shady ass politicians that could be pointing out. It just so happens that I'm in Newark, and this is just kind of funny, like as it relates. But he actually was born in Jacksonville, man. I looked the cat up, and then moved up, and I guess lived out the American dream. I
mean, it's certain when you're talking about things like racketeering, other like underground economy activities. That's definitely the American dream. I mean, that's what this. That's what this. Well, can we curse?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's what this shit was built on. So.
Yeah. No, man. Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I mean,
it's just barbarity. That's
we know things are broken. Yeah, we know things are broken, but it's working as designed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
In so many ways.
Yo, Joshua, though, man, this is rich. I wish I would just behold for 36 years. This is from from obviously crusader against all that's wrong and unjust in the world, Mr. Chris Christie, all right, prosecutor at the time, feds. He was a W. Bush appointee, by the way, attorney. U.S. attorney. For 36 years, Sharp James reigned over this city, Mr. Christie said in a news conference on the courthouse steps, referring to Mr. James as 2 decades as mayor and 16 years on the municipal council. Today, he has taught the lesson that for those who disgrace their public office, for those who betray the public trust, there's only one place for you. That is, and that is federal prison.
So Chris Christie is supposed to be like New Jersey's like Giuliani, right?
Yeah. But we got an alternative way. We could get you out on a boat. I'll take you fishing. Don't worry about the concrete blocks down there. We're going to go out in the middle of Newark Bay, and I don't know. I might end up fishing you up. Yeah, I don't know. So, anyways, man, welcome to Redspin Sports. We're just kind of like welcome to Joshua and Joshua. Glad to have you on here tonight. Joshua McCoy is a freelance writer. We're going to look at some of his work, especially talking NBA stuff tonight. Kyrie Irving, the significance of his activism. Also want to get into what's going on with this Kwame Brown stuff. So I think it gets into a lot of questions of questions of the way black masculinity is criminalized in a lot of people's minds, and then also how movements get divided based on identity politics. And how, look, Kwame Brown said some, he's rolling out the misogyny and stuff in there, but he's also, I think some of the points still he's making about, the corporate media, about the way guys like him are created, the industry that creates them, the conveyor belt. If you listen from William Roden's term.
William Roden is one of my heroes.
Oh yeah, $40 Million Slaves is just an amazing book, and the idea that the conveyor belt and what that is, and it's the whole industry that creates someone like Kwame Brown. He comes from a town that's just outside of where I grew up in Jacksonville. Went to Glenn Academy in Brunswick, Georgia, and he's a country. Grew up a country boy type, but he also is I don't know. He's at his. I mean, he ended up. It all started with being labeled a bust. On All the Smoke with Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes, and so we'll get into that in a minute. But that was just a little teaser, kind of. So we're glad to have Joshua here. Mike will be with us at 8:35, around there, give or take. He's got some organizing obligations and whatnot in Jacksonville. But we'll start off with a little humor. Not that we haven't had humor enough, but were you about to get?
I was gonna say let's definitely start with that, but then definitely quickly want to address just one thing outside of the world of sports, and that is that the narrative that Biden has done something, and that he's held Israel responsible is being pushed all over today, and I just want to reiterate that is absolute bullshit. This is the same story, the same trope that's told every time, right? Where a president, Biden's not the first president to sit here and go, we are going to block, we will be the one nation who blocks on the UN Security Council any actionable way to stop what Israel's doing.
Right.
So the actual thing Biden can do is take direct action and stop something that's from happening, as it's happening. And I'm not saying those UN sanctions and the UN condemnation is going to fix things, but it sends a message. It does something that's never happened. And he sits there and you block it 5 or 6 times. You prevent this from ever happening. And that's the concrete action you could take. So you won't do that, but you will leak to the Washington Post, who basically runs a press release today for the White House that just says he had a phone call with Netanyahu and man, he's not happy.
Yeah.
That's nothing. There's nothing to that.
What about Andrew Yang? He comes out and then he also follows it up by saying not only the most egregious tweet ever, it's just laughably absurd. It's not even pro-Israel people are coming out and saying that kind of stuff. It's this dude so in his little technocratic bubble of oh my God, how am I going to innovate and privatize public schools, and oh my God, how am I gonna put this bullshit facade? I'm so tired of watching this stupid mayor campaign ads all up around this area now. It's
I bet.
It's just the 20 other people running for that damn office. So it's disgusting. And then his follow up is all oh, but we can strongly stand with Israel, but still like feel bad for all lives that are lost, knowing all lives matter type bullshit. So it's like a cry for Palestinians, So I mean, just like he gets like, what was it, Keith Olbermann before he like lost his mind on Russiagate? He used to do like the worst person in the world. It was basically like George W. Bush and one of his cabal of like criminals every single night,
Right.
And then the worst person in the world, but the worst person in the world tonight, and I don't know if it were long ass times, gonna be Andrew Yang.
Yeah, it's it's just one of those things that spread it and spread it wide, and don't let people tell you that Biden's actions today, which by the way, you don't know them. That's the best part. These are just stories. Like, you don't actually know them. Like, he took no action because the one thing he could have done, which was action, would have been in the UN, and he blocked it. So,
for sure,
don't fall for this.
And to your point, and I know we got some other stuff to get to. Cool.
Yeah.
To your point, though, I was out Saturday downtown Atlanta. We had one of many of the worldwide demonstrations, and you can't ignore hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people around the world in the streets.
Wow.
And it wasn't like a few. I can tell you that out of all the protests and demonstrations and actions that I've been to, this was as big as anything except for what we saw this summer after like Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. Outside of that, I can't remember anything as big as that since the reaction after Michael Brown.
No, facts. I mean, that's all true. And the reality is, I mean, I was at one in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, a couple of weeks ago. My friend DJ Small Change, who's a good progressive DJ at New York City. You should check him out. But anyways, it was just it was that one was like pretty big. It was like the week before the Nakba, but then the one on last Saturday in Brooklyn, Bay Ridge, which is down like the bottom of Brooklyn. And then in the next day, Sunday in Manhattan, man, was massive. And I know they've been going on all over. So it's like I think what's exciting finally is to see like all the BS Hasbara like propaganda. I mean, this stuff. I mean, I'm still on like what's that stupid site, the Canary Mission? It's
Canary,
like former. I'm highlighted as like they tweet at my employer and stuff, and like you're anti-Semite, SJP, like white guy.
That shit has to stop, man.
Yeah. So I mean, they have no power to do anything. It's messed up. It's all that shit. But I just had to laugh about it. It's like, whatever.
The reason this shit happens, the reason these Biden stories like that, no, he's doing something. The reason those stories happen isn't because people like the three of us will fall for them. It's because there is power behind this movement, and it is powerful, and it is as big as we've all seen, and they want it to stop. These stories are meant to get the casual fringe people or low information folks to go, well, see, we did something about it.
Yeah.
And then stop. Like they just want it to stop. And it's gross.
That's gross. And we got to move it on, but I'll say this real quick. And it's just that, look, activism works, man. People want to say all this pessimistic bullshit. You hear, what's going to happen if you change? Like there was this speakers like at where I used to coach, and my brother and dad went to high school and everything. Robert E. Lee High School, which is mostly like 80% black, and we had like 2 white guys on the team when I coached there. So I was speaking in favor of changing the name. And I remember that one guy got up. They had like the one black guy who got up to speak that literally had in favor of keeping the name, because I remember him saying clearly like, well, what next? Like, what do y'all want? And it's just the lack of imagination for a lot of people in this country is profound, because it's the system is just like beating people into this like idea that this like the way things are, it is what it is, as if like, the way things are now is some permanent condition. The world has never been that way. Nothing has just stayed static ever in politics. There's no like sacred cows that have been too big to fall. I mean, they've been to be transformed, reformed, revolutionized, whatever it may be, wherever the movement goes. But it's the movement in the streets and this people power that changes shit. And that's why you're hearing David Ignatius, mouthpiece of the CIA, from the Washington Post, going on Morning Joe and talk about the need to like recalibrate, U.S. position. They see that like the younger generation is not buying this shit anymore. It's just not. There's just too much with social media shit that can get out, and you're being told the same tired cliches, human shields. They're Hamas. Just say it over and over. I mean, the Graves on Aaron Mate's interview with a Hamas, a health minister got taken down by YouTube and on the grounds of inciting violence and criminal criminal activity or something. I hope I'm not misquoting that, but it's just wild, man. That's all I got to say. Well, we're going to come back to Palestine, though. Don't worry. But for right now, we got to have a little levity here for a moment. So, and Mike Sampson, our other co-host, Mike Sampson, and myself I'm up in North Jersey, New York City area now, but I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. So I got, look, I'm going to fanboy. I got Trevor Lawrence, Tim Tebow, Urban Meyer. I'm just being old cringe. Tim Tebow. Yeah, just being a little cringy, but gotta have some fun. But I actually played against. I mean, I grew up with Tebow. He's a year younger than me, so it's insane though, man. It's really a cult with these people. So check out today a local story on Channel 4. This is on. You can check it out on newsforjacks.com too. And Tim Tebow is back in Jacksonville, and it's not the best look for our home Mike and I's hometown PR wise here. You'll see for yourself.
We'll have more on the evening newscasts. Well, if there was a song to be put to this story, it's Reunited, and it feels so good. The song's the mantra for Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow right now from Gainesville to Jacksonville. Taking a live look at TIAA Bank Field, where just moments ago, News for Jacks reporter Scott Johnson spotted Tebow walking from the stadium to the practice field. And Scott, he was wearing
I love it. Spotted. Stott spotted him. Stott spotted him. All right.
A Jags jersey, and that had to prompt some excitement.
Yeah, it is. It's the first time we've ever really seen this, Bruce. They're over practicing right now. Let's put that video up on the screen.
What is this a video of?
We see walk by
there we go.
Number 85. That is Timothy Tebow of Nice High School, UF fame, and now Jaguars fame, officially practicing with the team, trying to make the team as a tight end. This is essentially set Jags Nation on fire just after they learned about Trevor Lawrence being the number 1 pick to the team. So it couldn't be any more exciting of a time to be a Jacksonville Jaguar. And just listen to the mayor of Jacksonville, Lenny Curry, just speaking out on Tebow.
This guy is such a fraud, man. This guy used to be the head of the Florida GOP. He was Republican Party chair, and then he's just a huge fanboy, for the team. Which I mean, I'm a fan too, but it's terrible with him. And he also has been pushed the most brazen privatization scheme for the utilities company, and then thankfully some reporters what's left of the newspaper industry with the Florida Times Union in town actually really did some great work uncovering stuff. So this guy is a complete jackass. But having said that,
the people that are criticizing, I understand it. These deals happen all the time. The guy signed a deal. He's got to go out and earn a spot. And I think he said on Twitter today, he understands that and recognizes that. I think the world of Tim Tebow, I hope he makes it. But I think it's a good time to get Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence, Urban Meyer, Tim Tebow, Miles Jack, Robinson. I mean, we got a good group coming.
Yeah. Mayor Curry.
Before there was talk back in 2009, he might.
Yeah, Justice. So that guy was the head of the Florida GOP, and he's the mayor, and he tried to.
No, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah. He's just,
I'm sorry, but is anybody in 2021 hearing Trevor Lawrence, Miles Jack, Tim Tebow? One of these things is not like the other. It is insane to say it like that. There's and plus, didn't he just sign a contract to try to make the team? I mean, it's not like the dude's guaranteed, on the 53.
I'll be honest. Best case scenario, and I'll say what it is knowing the kind of athlete he is. No one's ever doubted his ability to. He's strong. He's one of the strongest guys in the weight room. He outbenched his offensive line and stuff at Florida, but it's this leg drive and leg strength. So he's not going to be out catching passes, man. But he could. I'm not going to put it past him, having competed against this cat and know the kind of spirit he has. Find a way to be a blocker. They can actually block as a fullback if they got certain packages, and then have some just short yardage run situations. I mean, that's
and in special teams, he can definitely he
can do kickoff return.
It's just funny to hear that list of names. It makes me laugh every
absurd.
time.
It's beyond absurd. And if you haven't go ahead, Joshua.
I was gonna say, so my connection there to Tim Tebow is I grew up in Denver.
That's
And
right.
so being a Broncos fan, you're a Broncos fan for life. And
Yeah. My girlfriend's a Broncos fan. Yeah.
There we go. Okay. And so, the big play with Tebow was when he hit Demaryius Thomas on that slant against the Steelers. And I've never let it go that Tim Tebow got all the credit for that. And it's like Demaryius Thomas ran like 70 yards. What are you talking about?
I think it was even more than that. But
I think it was more than that, yeah. It was like the pass was like 10 yards or 15 yards, and the run was like the length of the field. And I've never forgiven Tim Tebow for that.
You got to understand, man. I mean, Demaryius Thomas should be grateful that he was in the presence of like Tim, so he could be touched by the hand of God. I mean, Tim, so like, no, I feel you. It's like
Demaryius Thomas probably had a 2,000-yard season in him.
In
one of those years, if he was playing. Let me not diminish Tim Tebow's brilliant spirit. It's so wonderful that he brought the knee to the football field, to the gridiron. It is amazing.
We
need to bring since we're bringing Tim Tebow back, we should bring the knee back. And
hell yeah, man! And we're gonna get into that with some Kenny Stills and seeing his evolution and Kyrie but we got to finish this up because
it gets worse.
Unfortunately, that was like let's look at a small appetizer, my man. All right.
Become a Jaguar didn't happen. Then 10 years ago, he almost left the Denver Broncos to come here to Jacksonville. I want to show you a live report.
This guy is like reliving the moment. Here we go.
He's talking about the drama.
He is so proud of this report. Watch this.
When it was back and forth on whether or not he would become a Jaguar in 2011. It was a rough day for many Tebow fanatics. You can imagine this morning they woke up and they were probably Tebowing, just praying that Tebow would come to the Jaguars. Then mid-afternoon, disappointment turned into anger as they were mad at
That'll love local news.
Maybe feeling
they were
just
mad.
Want him here. But then things changed again later in the day. They start Tebowing again, thinking maybe Tim will come here. And then now here finally, moments ago, we find out Tebow will be going for sure to the New York Jets. You can imagine how emotional a day this has been for many fans.
Yeah. Hold on, man. Hold on.
And now a decade.
But I hate when people pause too much, but I gotta pause for a second. I make this like doing the whole like Jimmy Dore type deal where he's like pausing every 5 seconds. Like, yeah, we know the Democrats suck, man. Anyways, but
force the vote.
Oh man, like. Anyways, like I'm not imposed. I forced the vote. I think it's like it needs to happen, but that whole thing, I won't even touch on that right now. All right. But what's wild, man, is like look at what's going on in Palestine. Look at what's going on, and with you got like right-wing guys from the Victims of Communism CIA cutout group, Adrian Zenz, who's an anti-Semite anthropologist, German academic, literally being the only source in this claim, Cold War escalation claim on genocide in Xinjiang, and you have all the litany of things just going on, the normalized misery of people living under the neoliberal hell in Honduras that Joe Biden helped create with the coup of Manuel Zelaya in 2009. The Plan Colombia by Joe Biden being an architect of that. You got all this stuff going on in the world, right? But yet, this is what was the word he used just a second ago? Let's hear this again. It's like this. It's like, look, it's sports and everyone, but this just shows a mindset here.
And now a decade later, moments ago, we found, here finally, moments ago, we find out Tebow will be going for sure to the New York Jets. You can imagine how emotional a day this has been for many.
Just imagine how that sounds to somebody in Gaza. I talked to some people fairly consistently over there, and emotional day, man. He's not even playing, man. So wow.
Fans. And now a decade later, moments ago, we found out he's becoming a Jacksonville Jaguar. Fans are excited. David Mendenhall is a super fan out here. So Dave, tell me, what does this mean? You guys are thrilled over.
Oh, I'm so excited. Tim is such a great guy. We can't wait to get him on. We can't wait to get him in the locker room. We are super excited.
You think he'll make the?
We got Mike Sampson in the house. Now he's finally reached the level. He has bought the first year Jacksonville Jaguar season ticket holder. All right, but don't worry. He got his tickets, before Timmy came,
Oh yeah, so you should be reselling those things.
Oh hell no, he's stoked, man.
I'm just doing my part to increase the revenue share for the players. I'm with the union having more money to negotiate.
There you go, man. Yeah, no, no, it's something else. But I just know, man. Like, this guy right here, it's something else. But just in Jacksonville in general, like, and I think not beyond just Jacksonville, it's like the level of all across like evangelical America. It's like the deifying of Tebow. It's sad because like I wish in some levels you could just like, you can't even talk about him. Like I said a few minutes ago that like he does have like an insane will to compete in his spirit. And I immediately thought afterwards, I'm like, I'm just like, that's like a talking point, and then so people are going to hear me and they're going to like think that I'm like, like just being all team Timmy and all that. But I'm really just literally like saying that, like, I mean, having, competed against this guy myself in high school and then, knowing like just how strong he is. Like, I mean, I can see him being like a fullback, being a blocker, being a guy that can like, do some short yardage. But then the thing is, you can't even have a conversation about this cat because it's like so tinged with all these like, everybody. It's like people are immediately going to put you in a camp, that you're either like, Team Timmy, or you're like,
well, it's like, it's like, but how can you not box those people up?
I know. Look at this.
Look at David Mendenhall. He shows up to Jaguars like he's wearing his Tim Tebow Florida jersey. Like, is he even there to see a Jaguars player, or is he there to see a guy who signed a contract for minicamp? Like, clearly he's there to see a guy who signed a contract for minicamp. That's what he's there for.
This guy, this is his like, raison d'etre. I mean, it's just this is his existence, man. Like, so let's watch the end of it, then we'll react, man. I'm sorry, I'm the worst at it. So here we go.
The team.
I really think he's going to make the team. I don't think there's any way he doesn't make the team. He's got a lot of heart, a lot of soul, and he's ready to get out there and kick some hind end.
Thank you very much for joining us. So the fans are jazzed. They've been down here trying to see him. We're going to send it back to you.
So, Scott, there are 90 people on the roster right now.
This part got even worse.
There have to be 53. It's interesting to note he was wearing number 85. His old number used to be 15.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, Gordon Minshew has that number right
now.
Says his name wrong. Gordon.
Yes. Very good point, Bruce. So I've talked to some fans. They think Tebow is just trying to make the team and not cause waves, have a low profile and trying to make the team. But is Minshew still going to be on the team? This is an interesting debate we will watch unfold. But for now, he said he wanted to be 85, and that's what he was wearing this morning, Bruce.
But if 15 becomes available, I guess we just have to wait and see.
Yo, let me throw up real quick, man. Like, this cat has been on local news in Jacksonville, Mike, since we were kids. I mean, he used to be on the ABC 25 station before they merged with First Coast News. But anyways, like, this cat says Gordon Minshew, and then he starts like, and then on top of that, then they start pivoting to the idea that like, oh, well, like people who don't know what they're talking about are going to hear that and be like, oh, well, they talking about him competing with like Gardner for the backup job now? Like, that's.
And they're basically like this dude needs to leave so Tim Tebow can wear 15, because if he doesn't wear 15, then the Lord won't be happy. Well, if the Lord's not happy, then our team won't win.
Another thing that I picked up on is it seems that Tim Tebow's very existence on the team, it's all his own doing. And whether he makes the team, it's his own doing. And whether he, and he's just trying to come in and not make any waves. And by the way, if he, ends up being quarterback or, backup quarterback to Trevor Lawrence, it's because Tim Tebow is just, he has that kind of, power and authority, which is interesting because, and I was talking about this on Black Power Media's the Remix show earlier today, and I know we're going to start getting into like how people are perceived through the media, and I think it's interesting that Tim Tebow never actually had to change positions, never, ever. And he's doing it now. I mean, let's call it what it is. It's a publicity stunt. He's a Jacksonville boy, it's the Jaguars, like nobody cares. Well, let me take that back. Y'all Jaguars fans, y'all do care. You do.
Yeah, but you got to realize, I mean, to be objective too, with Urban Meyer, Trevor Lawrence, like it's gotten more. The Jags have gotten more run recently because of those factors.
100%. Yeah, I don't want to take away from that. But when you start looking at this, you'll see even Justin Fields. They were like, planning stuff before the draft. Yeah. Like, he's lazy. He's the first. He's the last one in and the first one out. Is he intelligent enough? Is it whatever? And it's like, Justin Fields. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Yo, since you mentioned that, man, I got to pull that up because it's Dan Orlovsky's the shame here, and it's like, so yeah, y'all go ahead, Mike, if you want to hop in, whatever. I just got to pull up this Dan Orlovsky BS here.
No, I definitely see everybody's kind of criticism of it, of the Tebow signing from the standpoint of it. Football is supposed to be a meritocracy type of situation. And obviously, there's probably other 33-year-old tight ends who could contribute, who's been playing the game longer. Then again, it is the world that we live in, and Tim Tebow has taken advantage of that ever since he was a young person. You know what I'm saying? And he's had that athletic skills and has carried him to where he is now. His politics are very much right evangelical. You know what I'm saying? And he's put that forth. He was actually in Tennessee with the governor of Tennessee for some human trafficking bill, like last week. He was like at a bill signing, and now he's like on the 90-man minicamp roster for the Jags.
Does he not realize that human trafficking is an inherent characteristic of capitalism? But
he probably doesn't have that broader analysis.
Yeah, I think that would be a fair assumption. Anyway,
is it for them to pose the whole potential backup, replace Gardner Minshew sort of thing?
That's not a real thing though.
I know, but like they were posing that. But I'm just saying, like, when you were like, is there other 33-year-old tight ends out there? I don't know. Is there any other under 33-year-old quarterbacks that we could all maybe think of off the top of our heads that maybe has a better work ethic that even Tim Tebow has stayed in shape better than Tim Tebow that still doesn't have a job? I'm just throwing it out there. Is there anyone we can think of? Anybody?
You mean Kaepernick?
See what I'm doing?
No.
Exactly.
Does he have an ice cream?
What I will say is it's a different position.
He's not playing quarterback.
I get that. I get that.
And I'm not sure Cap wants to play anymore at this point, to be honest. Like we don't know for sure, but we'll see. I don't know. It's like he's not going to play at any cost. We know that. He wasn't going to do things. He's going to do things on his own terms, right? Mike, my bad.
Yeah. Go ahead. Tim Tebow. We live in a imperialist and capitalist society built on individualism and liberalism and the belief in the individual being the creator of all as the central ruling principle of our whole existence. Therefore, you have a person like Tim Tebow, who in essence, I feel like athletically, he's super strong and super great. He's not the fastest. He's not the strongest. Wasn't a good of a thrower. I think psychologically, I think he had an advantage, due to kind of this whole narrative around this whole how society wants to create this great man that is changing everything. So he's always had that to carry him, and that's always been something that has carried him. And that, for some reason, he's still people want to talk about it, and it's crazy. Look at he was on First Take. They talked about him on ESPN today. They talked about him on all the news stations, and he's like a fourth string tight end. Well,
everyone makes money off this crap,
Yeah. So I think that's part of the work here is to parse these messagings through the media and, the different figures that are uplifted and so on and so forth, and to be able to raise a certain consciousness, because at the end of the day, everything that we do, everything that we say, it's all content for consumption in order to sell more things, right? In order to provide, get people caught up in the drama or caught up in whatever is the, spectacle for the day. In order to get eyeballs so you can sell stuff. That's really, kind of what this is about, including if it's selling an individual's assailing their character, their morals or what have you. And even if you are on the other side of that, if you're offering it up, it's there for it's there for the consumption And I think we'll probably get to that in a little bit, but I think it's worth noting that that's part of why Redspin Sports is so important.
Yeah, appreciate it, Joshua, man. And that's all. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, this stuff in society, it's all set up. It's a game. I mean, I'm in sports radio, ESPN New York. Who are they talking about today? Tim Tebow. And it's like, because they know it's polarizing, they know it's like a cultural war type thing where it puts people in camps, right? He's like represents like he's like the perfect wedge issue. Like he's like the Roe v. Wade, sports sort of thing, where it's like, it's like a litmus test, man. Like, it's like there's no in between, man. You know what I mean with that? It's just, so anyways, let's hear Dan Orlovsky, because I want to just like apologize actually. And I just want to get Joshua's reaction to this. I wasn't planning on doing this, but it's so disgusting. Like what he said. I'm glad Joshua mentioned it, because Justin Fields is like extraordinarily intelligent, right? And like, you want to just look at grades, and I know grades and test scores on everything, but it's what our society measures on, right? So it's like Justin Fields is off the charts. So, like, what is he talking about? I don't know. Let's see what he says here real quick. 2 minutes, and then we'll react.
I want to have a conversation about Justin Fields yesterday and what I said on Pat McAfee's show. So Pat on yesterday's show asked me, like, hey, sounds like Justin Fields is dropping. Why do you think that's the case? And I said, I don't know, but I had done some digging, and teams had told me that there were concerns with his work ethic, how great.
Oh, my God.
I said, that's what I've heard, Pat. And then obviously it created a big conversation and narrative yesterday, Firestorm. So that forced me to do even more digging over the last 24 hours. And I've had 2 conversations that I want to put out there to kind of clarify the situation or put more out there about the situation. One conversation I had is with an offensive coach at Ohio State. And he said, tell them that's absolutely not true, that Justin Fields' work ethic is spectacular, that he is a guy that has great football IQ and he's always studying tape. And then the second conversation I had is with John Beck, who's
real quick. How many fewer people are ever going to see this clarification than heard the original shit he said?
It was just so
trained Justin as he's headed into his pro day.
My bad.
And John's had a really positive experience.
Yeah, my bad.
Even before, give it context, he originally said that anonymously, like his whole reporting was, people have told me that Justin Fields is lazy, and he ran with that.
Yeah,
and he's writing.
It was some Trump shit. I'm hearing these things.
I'm hearing it. But now it's like, no, those people are wrong. Those people that told
you were wrong. You were peddling this bullshit.
Yeah, he didn't give a shit about making sure that was right or fact checking any bullshit. And now he's doing this whole like, I want to clarify.
The whole thing. What they
did bump this guy. We're gonna cut it off. Go ahead, Mike.
What they did to Justin Fields literally beat Trevor Lawrence, this year. He's taken Ohio State twice to a playoff, twice. He's his record stat wise was better than like Mac Jones, like career wise, up there with all the quarterbacks. Yet somehow they were rumored like, he may not even finish in the top 20. I'm like, what the. Like any other year, the guy's 6'4", 220, runs a 4.4. What's the issue? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, it was a racial question that showed up. I guess in regards to things worked out in regards to Trey Lance being drafted to the 49ers. But for a long time, it was about Mac Jones, the QB who went to Nate's alma mater, Bowles High School, and
Mike, it's the Bowl School.
Whatever.
Also the alma mater of D Brown of the Slam Dunk Contest fame, and Chipper Jones.
Chipper.
Yeah, so
whatever.
It was this whole thing about like, he's a quarterback, he just processes stuff faster. Justin Fields. He has to he's going to have to take more time to develop how to get off of read. So basically insinuating that he was like dumber than Mac Jones or dumber than Trevor. But it just processed so much faster. This guy literally is crazy. Yeah, like that was the racial bias.
Bump him.
The work ethic thing does not make sense, and it's like verbal clickbait when you literally watch a man beat Trevor Lawrence hurt. Like how many times? Like I'm no huge Matthew Stafford fan, but I've always respected the fact that Matthew Stafford's tough as hell and would play with a separated shoulder. And you know what? That comes down to your work ethic. Like, it comes down to your ability. Do you know how many people would just be like, shit, this hurts, and like, I can't do this?
Most people.
Yes. And we all watched Justin Fields do that and beat Clemson doing it.
Yeah.
And that injury caught up to him against Alabama. And at the same time, like, you know, I think they were a little outclassed, but like, yeah. Sorry, Mike, you're breaking up.
Joshua, what are you guys? This is the article you sent me. Now, I think
it's it's interesting you brought up you brought up Stafford because he's a UGA.
Can you mention? You said you brought Fromm up. That's a great backstory too. If you want to say it, mention it real quick.
Yeah, well, I mean, look. Let's just say people, you have to know, you know, if you know type of thing, that there was no way in hell that they were giving UGA starting QB1 to Justin Fields. And I'm glad that he got his way out of there. You know, I'm really happy he made his way out of there because there's no way you looked at their practices before that season and thought Fromm was a better quarterback. Yeah. There's no way that you go through the season and you see when it starts getting tight. I mean, look, when you're UGA, there's only like 3 or 4 hard games the whole season, right? And those are the games that matter. And so, because you're automatically like you're playing basically a top 10 schedule, a schedule that's going to put you in the top 10, you know, even in the SEC. And especially with the recruiting class, how many 5-star and 4-star recruits you get, you know, and so you get to the point where, hey, maybe we need to switch it up. And I'm just going to throw this out here, man. It's UGA, and I'll just say it like that. I think some of this is out of Kirby Smart's hands. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, with that, going back to the fact that Mayor Lenny Curry was commenting on the Jacksonville Jaguars like he's some kind of analyst or something, right?
Oh, yeah.
So these politicians, you don't really have control over Shad Khan's team, but if you're the governor of the state of Georgia or the state of Florida, and you're in charge of the public school state system, how many tens of millions of dollars flow? That's all I'm gonna say. You know, like if you want to dig more into that, if you're watching this, go ahead. But you know, I mean, shit hasn't changed much. I'll just say that. And you can tell by the way that people were talking about Justin Fields, who you saw with your own eyes do his thing for 2 seasons. And, you know, and supposedly he couldn't beat out Jake Fromm. You know? Yeah,
I mean, Jake Fromm, man, let's not forget. I mean, this cat also had the whole thing where he's talking about elite white people. I mean, that's he didn't mean. I mean, whatever. It's like but it's like that reveals a larger mindset. Like, I don't think people don't. It's a perfect example. Like, racism isn't like necessarily racial malice, you know, or like, you know, there's plenty of like racist cats like I've known and whatever that like are. They're cool with black people. They'll hang out. That has nothing to do with like whether or not they believe in like white supremacy and whether or not they believe in a system that backs it up. And like, you know, I mean, so it's like this idea. It's a purely a byproduct of like the ideology that comes out of like living under, you know, the hegemony of capitalism. And it's like the idea is that, you know, it's just. I don't know. It's so wild, man. The whole notion of that racism is somehow just a personal type thing, that it's like about, you know, whether or not, you know, somebody is nice to people. It's like that's a perfect encapsulation of like how neoliberalism just like destroys people's capacity to understand politics and understand power. But
100%.
Yeah. And anyways, real quick, I mean, this article is just basically going on just about like, honestly, it's like it's the last thing we'll say. It's the exact inverse of what Dan Orlovsky was saying.
If you wanted to extrapolate, which I don't think anyone should, because these types of tests do not. I don't know that you can in fact measure intelligence, so to speak, right? But if you wanted to extrapolate anything from this, you could say that Justin Fields could possibly be the most intelligent person to ever lace up as a QB1 to play quarterback in the NFL. If that's what you wanted to extrapolate from this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you want to believe in the Wonderlic and the aptitude, all the kind of standardized testing stuff, you absolutely can draw that conclusion. And people do all the time, and that's what this system gives us to measure people on. And since they'll, you know, use it to the benefit of other cats all the time, Justin Fields deserves credit for that. So that's it. Mike, you were trying to say something real quick?
No, I always kind of even to wrap it up, always reminds me of the discourse around Lamar Jackson.
100%.
He's always discussed, and basically came in as a rookie, was in the playoffs. Right, he was in the playoffs his rookie year.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Basically, has made the playoffs, took his team to the playoffs every year, winning at least 10 games, producing 4,000 yards, 40 touchdowns a year in some form or fashion, but he still gets the same rap about how he's not cerebral. He can't process defenses. He's not the best of throwers and all that jazz, but it's always seemed like, he's like right now he's going through CBA negotiations with not CBA, his own contract negotiations with the Ravens, and he's negotiating his own contract. And there's all this controversy that the people are like, oh, Josh Allen, you definitely want to pay him. You know what I'm saying? He's a future. He's a franchise QB. And Josh Allen this year took huge strides because like last year, the past 2 years when he was just a big, tall white dude who could throw it real far and could run. Couldn't make any type, you know what I mean? Wasn't accurate at all. But Lamar Jackson somehow, Josh Allen's now the safe bet. Lamar Jackson is somehow seen as not the best quarterback in that draft, and he's the one that won an MVP. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I appreciate you bringing up Lamar Jackson because Lamar Jackson was said to needed to switch positions before he ever played a down in the NFL. And it's like, are you kidding me?
He won a Heisman Trophy at this position in college, like in college, it wasn't like no Eric Crouch situation,
right?
Like all option,
right? It wasn't Cordell Stewart. Shout out to the CU Buffalo
former CU Buffalo, right? Who threw the Hail Mary at the big house? No, hold on. Yeah, threw the Hail Mary at the big house to beat Michigan.
I'm gonna say though, I just want to throw one last thing out on that. It's like I've always felt, at least for like the last decade, that the talk around quarterback and race is like the last bastion of eugenics that still exists. And you can see it in these people's writing because it's so fucking blatant. Like it is just my girlfriend and I were watching a show, and she was like, we were watching a show from the turn of the century, and they were talking about eugenics, and that's how that came up. She was like, "Does this still exist?" And I was like, "I mean, it exists in sports talk all the fucking time." Yeah, I know they believe in it outside of that, but I'm just saying, like, sports seems to be like the one place where it's like you can still openly espouse this shit, like, and it's just like, well, they bring up a good point. No, they fucking don't. Like, this shit is so blatant and so obvious as to what it is. Like, to call one person struggles under pressure, but yet lacks or isn't cerebral. Those two things are the same, and you associate one label to one, you associate the other label to the other.
Isn't cerebral comes from a questionable past.
That's what I was saying. If we talk about any of these terms, like, you have to question, are they even something that we want to continue to perpetuate?
Think about Baker Mayfield, man. He was drafted #1 by the Cleveland Browns. He had an arrest when he was in college from running away from a cop.
Well, he was partying at the University of Arkansas on like an off-Friday week or something. Yeah,
was drunk, partying, ran away from a cop, and didn't get away from the cop. Like, he was drunk. That's an embarrassment in itself. Still the number one draft pick. Like, imagine if Lamar Jackson. imagine Lamar Jackson might not have been undrafted. Like, he might have gotten drafted in the 4th round as a slot receiver. Like, this is. Yeah. It's still, like you said, Justin, still kind of the QB position is that one last bastion in which, they haven't accepted the same athletic prowess of races and ability to, be a quarterback and lead the team.
So to your point,
they're still. Go ahead.
Sorry, Justin. Go ahead.
No, they're still making the old fucking colonialist point of like savagery and, you know, ignorance, but like they found a new way to like get that narrative out there. And it's just, and people just fucking, it can be on ESPN. It can be like a headline story on ESPN. And it's just such a just vile thing to read. And it's just still out there. But like, no, it's because it's in the confines of this discussion. Like, oh, we don't mean outside. We're talking about football smarts. It's different.
I think that's like to both of your points. I think that's part of the reason why so many people hate Kyrie Irving, you know, to change sports, because football is very much so you do your job, you know, Bill Belichick. There isn't like, you know, if you can, the people who have made themselves personalities like Terrell Owens, you know, I mean, you know, widely panned throughout most of his career. And even still now, like, you know, it seems that some of these folks don't take him as a serious person, you know, on in these sports shows or what have you. It seems they caricaturize him and in a way that I don't believe is fair, or in a way that, you know, since we were talking a lot about race, I don't know that eccentric white players, you know, are treated in this way. And actually, I can say that I know for sure that they are not treated in this way. And so when you're talking about quarterback position, you're talking about kind of what you were saying about it kind of being the last bastion of sorts. You're also talking about like the idea of the Brett Favre type of, you know, gunslinger, you know, dominant, big arm, you know, aw shucks, you know, whatever, every man, like it's like representative of so many different things, you know, especially from like a political economy type of situation, representative of like a white supremacist, you know, patriarchal, imperialist domination. That, you know, it's like, oh my goodness, like, what are we going to do if we don't have a star white guy who is like, you know, the Tom Brady of the league, you know? And I think they're very much afraid that, you know, even somebody like Patrick Mahomes, you know, might be the guy.
You read my mind. I was literally about to interject and ask you about
that.
Because,
you know?
I feel like they are afraid, but there's also like, I feel like, I don't know if like, you know, colorism, so to speak, you know, like it being light skinned, if that plays any role in it. But it's like, it does seem to be more of like a, you know, or his country accent, his country twang from like rural Texas. I mean, he's definitely, you know, got a.
Is that country? Is that how his voice sounds? Country?
I don't know. I mean, he's definitely got a southern, like he's from like Tyler, Texas, I think. Like,
so I met Pat, and been to a practice, and I can tell you that his spirit is one in which you can tell why guys rally around him.
Yeah.
But physically, so I've also seen him here in Atlanta, like during Super Bowl weekend.
Right.
And you forget this is like a man that terrorizes defenses. So like I don't know, like I think maybe to your point, some, you know, is there some colorism? Maybe. But I think he's still kind of, even though, you know, he's kind of been at the pinnacle so far in his career, it still feels like an underdog story. It doesn't seem like he is even Russell Wilson, you know, to that level. And also, I think there's a boyish, you know, aspect to him that, you know, maybe these guys look at us like, oh, he's, you know, a young guy, which he is. But I don't know if that's
right. Not that young. That's his
not
dad,
that young. Not that young. So I go ahead. Sorry about that.
I think his dad being a professional athlete definitely helps him in terms of like kind of how he knows the way to project himself to maximize earnings. Sure. You know, it reminds me of kind of you know, Dak Prescott when he was just becoming big with the Cowboys, and the whole stuff was around kneeling. And of course, he took a stance. Like he was like, you know, I don't see why we got to kneel. It was kind of really of a shitty stance he took at the time when Colin Kaepernick was first. You know,
it was so bad. It was so bad.
But then you notice, like, I don't know if y'all saw, like, it's been that phenomenon with black quarterbacks, and it's hard to really describe it. You know, hard to really describe it to people like I guess who aren't really black, because I guess it's easy in the sense that, you know, the black QB has to make himself acceptable to the broader audience, which means that he doesn't take the stances he does take. Like, even Cam Newton, when he first became a star QB, he was asked about the black, protest around Mike Brown's death, and he took a very, we have to worry about black crime first. And at that time, Cam Newton was like on the cover of like that Greek yogurt, commercials. He was big, you know what I'm saying?
Well, hey, Mike, I'm sorry, I got to interject though. Cam,
funny enough, when he started going downhill, and became more political, they dropped him. And then Dak Prescott was the black QB who was the safe QB who's not taking controversial stances and whatnot.
I don't know though, but I thought it was the other way around, because my understanding is that when he was they were on the come up, winning an MVP that year, they went to the Super Bowl. That he was more free spirited. He was talking a lot, and then there was a meeting with Frank Luntz, the right wing pollster, who's on Fox News a lot. And they told him to dial it down. It was after that, Jerry Richardson, the racist former owner of the Carolina Panthers, actually set that meeting up. And who used to own Denny's too, that's been sued for racial discrimination more than any restaurant in America. Because
I remember I was intensely following it, because that was the year the Panther, you had people was talking about the Black Panthers. There was a huge kind of, from Black America, a huge support for Cam Newton during that Super Bowl run year, because he had talked during that season about, I'm looked at differently as a black QB. Right. He was correct on, like you said. So he had that analysis in regards to understanding what he was as a black QB in the NFL, owned by racist white supremacists. However, it was different when he was presented with what's happening, what's your opinion on society at large, you know what I'm saying?
Well, and
and that's when he kind of, and I think a lot of it was, and even myself, we put expectations on him. Like you said, he said this, oh shit, he must be he must be like Cam Newton's going to be the next, you know what I'm saying, Black Power icon. We thought Cam Newton was what Colin Kaepernick became,
Right.
And that's essentially what happened. So that's kind of the viewpoint on it. And even QBs like Dak Prescott, even Russell Wilson, Russell Wilson, when he first came out, his Instagram was filled with him, meeting with the Seattle Police Department, and just doing walks, just like the way to how to make himself acceptable to the broader,
Russell Wilson, I think, has become more embracing of blackness. I think it's his career going on. I remember early on, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was very he actually divorced his longtime white girlfriend and whatnot, and then got married to Sierra. And then he also used to be intensely apolitical. And I think that's an example of what, Mike, you talk about, the movement actually having an effect on people,
He's still pretty apolitical. I mean, I know that this is Josh's first experience with me, but I rock the Seahawks hat also, and but at the same time, his evangelical side, though, because that's the part that's never left Russell Wilson, has also kept him from being. It's I do believe that he's woken up in ways, but you can only wake up so much if you're still, and I mean, I guess taking a stance here saying that, evangelicals can't be that woke, but you get what I'm saying. I don't want to alienate anyone who might be evangelical who's watching.
Right. Yeah. No,
there's a cap on Russell Wilson's ability to open up to certain things and to certain causes. And that's kind of, his Instagram is still, it's all, there's more praying hands emojis than anything else you'll ever see. I mean, it is where he's at. And, I do think that sect, right? I don't think that the problem is religion. The problem is that the evangelical sect. He is very
we got to move on.
I know.
Man.
We got to move on to Kyrie.
I mean, I don't mean that Mike.
Josh did such a good job setting it up.
We got to get Josh. I mean, Quincy Carter, I was just pointing out, he started quarterback for Georgia in the 90s. And I don't know, after Jim Donnan got fired shortly thereafter, then Mark Richt came in. And I want to make the point that when Cam Newton was getting recruited, Mark Richt, in the state of Georgia, mind you, right? Cam Newton from College Park, didn't even get they didn't even want him as a quarterback, right? So he ends up going to Florida, like, and all that kind of stuff. But Quincy Carter, I can't think of, like, I think he might have been the first Georgia, like, consistent starter. Hines Ward started a few games, like when they had the end of Ray Goff's time there, and they had a lot of injuries. But the whole issue with Georgia and black quarterbacks is an interesting one. DJ Shockley played for like a year, but he was behind David Green, and then
they've actually had a good amount of black QBs compared to like Florida. Like Florida had Chris Leak, and now Emory Jones is probably the first like starter that Florida's had.
Yes,
as opposed to Georgia, there's DJ Shockley, Quincy Carter.
Although, but I think the point is that like there is a with the Jake Fromm thing, it's definitely suspect. There was like an idea that Fromm, but the thing is, you see where the NFL thought of Fromm. I mean, he left early because he was worried about competition. Yeah, I mean, a 5th rounder, and then what's crazy is he left early. That was just so dumb on so many levels. I mean, it makes sense. His Fields had already left. Right, and he's that worried about like JT. I don't know, Joshua. Do you follow like Georgia most of all? Real quick?
I do follow a fair amount, and I would just say, man, there was a point. I think I can't remember who they were playing. I think it was Auburn. The year before Justin Fields, the year that Justin Fields left, the season after, and it was just like, yo, like the guy has to, like, you're not even going to use him for a gimmick play, like, at all. Like, the guy has to, Justin Fields needs to see the field. And it's just one of those things where it doesn't make sense. From a football standpoint, it doesn't make sense.
Clemson put Trevor Lawrence in over Kelly Bryant.
That's what I was just about to say that. Like, Kelly Bryant literally took Clemson to like the playoffs. Yeah. And then the next week he's averaged for 2 weeks. All right, Trevor, you going in. From not the case. You know what I'm saying? It's wild. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's transition right now because Joshua's here. And I want to have let him kind of take the lion's share. We've all been, like myself included, talking too much. But anyway, he shared this real quick, and I think it's a good starting point. And then we want to get to his excellent piece from back in February that he wrote, and it was published in Mongoldom. All right, at mongoldom.com. And this was about like what he wrote about NBA players and like how NBA players can look to the past and make Black history today. So we want to get to that, but first want to hit on like what's pertinent and present right here. And I don't know if you want to read this. Like I can scroll down, Joshua. But go ahead.
We could summarize. So first, giving credit where credit is due. MSNBC columnist Dave Zirin, he kind of put together somewhat of an oral history of athletes in their stance on Palestine. And I think what you'll see, so he starts in 2014 about Dwight Howard just simply tweeting #FreePalestine. And basically, let's just say them folks in the back room got him together real quick. And he deleted it. And all of a sudden he's like, yo, I don't know anything about politics. And you will not hear anything about politics from me again. And so you start seeing that. I think another thing that's not in this article, I don't believe, but Kenny Stills and Michael Bennett, I think it was in 2017. So what a lot of people don't know is how friendly the United States and Israel, the state of Israel, are on so many levels. So much so that it's not even just the $3.8 million or so a day?
A day, a million a day. A day.
3.8 billion. So is it 3.8 billion a day? Or
no. Well, there's military aid, then there's like just aid in general, and there's like I think like at least 3.8 billion in like just aid to Israel, and then there's all the
10
all the arms,
like 10 million a day.
10 million a day, and then all the arms deals and stuff are wild. Also, be on the lookout for Miguel Garcia, our friend of the show from Sports as a Weapon podcast. He just interviewed Dave Zirin actually, and that's going to be dropping within the next week or so. So y'all check that out. Yeah, go ahead.
Definitely check that out for sure. And so, I think it's worth saying that a lot of the stuff that the United States does from a political economy standpoint is using culture. That goes back to the very roots of the CIA and the FBI. And, it's that, a lot of their first investments are into affecting culture, entertainment, arts, sports, the university, all those things. So, this is not something that's new. And so what happens is they sent there was an NFL contingent of players that, was going over to Israel. And that's kind of like the thing that United States does from a diplomatic standpoint. Michael Bennett and Kenny Stills sat out, basically in protest because they're like, they can't support the state of Israel. And so, so you go down this article. They're also talking about Yusuf Nurkic, Dame Lillard, WNBA, Laisha Clarendon, who I don't think the WNBA gets enough credit for the leadership that these folks take, as far as in activism circles. And we can get to a little bit of that because I think there was something that I wanted to mention, but I kind of ran out of words on that article about the players lockout. But I definitely want to give them more credit. And so they kind of go through history. He's talking about like the Egyptian soccer player Mohamed Abu Trika, Mohamed Salah, who plays for Liverpool, and he kind of goes through this whole thing about how the consciousness is shifted, or there seems to be a perceptible shift in consciousness around Palestine. And I think kind of to what you said earlier, I mean, it's hard to say, hey, Israel has a right to defend itself when you can see for yourself, that the building that the freaking AP is in, and who else? Like, it's like the media buildings.
AP was there, Al Jazeera,
so
others too. Like I don't know if Reuters is in there, but I mean, just real quick though. We mentioned it earlier, but like the fact that you got people like David Ignatius, mainstream dudes going on MSNBC Morning Joe now, and they're like talking about Joy Reid actually. I'll be surprised if Ali Velshi's not if he's not gone from MSNBC after the what he went on. Way too much truth telling allowed for the Peacock network there, So although it was amazing, I was sitting there just like about to fall out of my chair listening to that shit. Maybe I'll play it a little bit later on, but nonetheless, my bad.
It's all good. And so basically, I'm just looking at this like it's a couple things. It's good that these things were recognized now, right? But similar to like the Colin Kaepernick, how I judge players in their, quote unquote, speaking out and speaking up and using their platforms, it's by the actual risk that they take, right? And so what we're saying is, Kyrie Irving's comments on Palestine are a big deal. So at once Kyrie Irving is, even though he hasn't necessarily explicitly gone to certain lengths, I think he's still, compared to the average NBA player, definitely put his neck out on the line, right? And I think that's kind of where you start saying like, what's the risk calculus? Because LeBron James is still on the first page of Malcolm X, but I haven't heard anything from him on Palestine,
right?
Not to beat up too much on LeBron. I mean, but when you are the king, when you are King James, you get all the like people were saying he should have been MVP this season, and I'm like, did you watch anybody else play basketball?
What about Jokic, man? I mean, you're talking. I mean, that dude single-handedly almost won a big fantasy league I was in for me. Just like that cat is off the chain, man. It's like, and not just him, but you got there's Julius Randle. I mean, guys that had I mean, like, I don't know. It's like LeBron.
You can say Russell Westbrook. You can say,
I'm a huge LeBron. I always defend LeBron, but it's fair to build off, piggyback on what you're saying, to critique him in the sense of like on Palestine. I mean, I don't think he lacks like the political education. I think it's like
I don't know.
You think so? Maybe not.
Well, I'll say it because LeBron is a very intelligent, very
absolutely,
very very knowledgeable. Like, I mean, LeBron is an international business person. Let's be forget.
Have you read LeBron Inc? I mean, it's like it breaks down kind of how his empire was built. Like, absolutely, LeBron's extraordinarily intelligent. What I'm saying is like, political education and like radical politics and understanding like, because like athletes are ensconced from a young age. You're identified as William Roden talks about $40 million slaves, the conveyor belt. The earlier you're identified like that, you're kind of taken away from it, like everyone else. And so I think he knows about stuff, but he's somebody I think he'll go where the movement takes him. Like where the movement goes, I think LeBron will start to go. And he hasn't set stuff on Palestine yet, but can you imagine the power that
We forget, and we sometimes place ourselves into these roles, right? Like if I were LeBron James, I'd be spouting Mao like at every press conference. Like that's me. We put ourselves in these positions, and we need to take the wins. And I get that so many times in the political spectrum, like we've been fooled, right? Like we've been fooled when any centrist Republican that runs as a Democrat wins and they say they're going to do things. We've been fooled too many times to buy that shit. Like we don't buy that shit anymore. It doesn't work. We don't fall for it. We know what they mean. We know what they're going to do. But when it comes to athletes like this, I understand LeBron doesn't have the same leftist principles that we do. I also get that he is in a higher tax bracket than we are. None of us can check out of capitalism, and we all know that. We all have to participate. We all have to play in this. So I get all of that, but it's easy to be cynical when somebody it's funny, you have the conversation with somebody about Bernie, right? And you tell them, well, Bernie was my compromise candidate. And they're like, what the fuck do you mean? He was so radical. And you're like, oh man, it gets so much more radical than that. You don't even know.
Listen to Bernie on Israel will make you realize how not radical he is.
Exactly. So it's one of those things that it's easy to be cynical with that kind of stuff. But we got to be careful when we're cynical about athletes not going as far as we'd like them to, because athletes going as far as they're going, Kyrie making the statements that he's made, just like you said, Joshua, that is a risk. He's taking a risk. He's fucking with his money. And that means he feels strong enough about something to fuck with his money. And that we have to take those as wins. Because that pushes the discourse. Entertainment will push the discourse so much further than any politician. Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, it's not. Look, I mean, I was just saying that about LeBron because I'm usually accused of being such a LeBron partisan and homer. I was just trying to say, yeah, I'd love to see it, and I think who knows, maybe it's possible. But let's get back to Joshua, man.
Justin, I know you're about to go into the Kyrie thing. I want to set this up though from a perspective of I think what I'm thinking about is so how a defensive end in football you're setting the edge, and then that's pretty much a big part of your job. So and I kind of look at the way that these folks are speaking up and speaking out. I think I look at it like that, right? And that somebody is setting the edge, and so I wouldn't be surprised because Kyrie Irving is out here that other people won't say a few things here or there because somebody's already been the person that's on the boundaries of kind of what's acceptable. Yeah. And they kind of see, okay, well, still Kyrie. And, obviously he's having a hell of a season, and so it's kind of hard to shut a 50, 40, 90 guy up, but, I think you start seeing stuff like that happen. And I don't think Kyrie doesn't make any kind of statement if you don't see the type of support, in the social movements, right? And I think the only thing that I'm suggesting, I think we'll get to this when we, kind of talk through the article that I published on mogul.com.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm suggesting is that not that these folks don't have a political education, is that, and not that they don't have class consciousness. I'm suggesting that some of these guys do have a class consciousness and they know which class they're in. And so, and I don't mean to be cynical about that, but I think you kind of see, kind of some of the younger guys and, kind of pull in during the NBA lockout, or excuse me, not lockout, during the Wildcat strike. And you had a situation where I think some folks were willing to, hey, look, if that's what we got to do, whatever. And, kind of some of the top players, the most popular players were like, no, this isn't, let's get to Kyrie. Let's get to Kyrie.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah. So Justin, you want to read this real quick so we can react, because this is a really important one. Then I think that it'll set the stage of going into Joshua's piece, or I can read it, but I think that
I don't mind. Yeah. So I'm going to go through. I just want you guys to know I'm not going to read as Nate scrolls. I'm going to read from another page. So I won't be able to see you guys. So you just stop me whenever you want to weigh in.
Yeah. No, just read.
I need bigger.
Read all the way through, then we'll react.
All right. Brooklyn Nets guard Kyrie Irving is highly respected on and off the court, and for good reason. There's his title with the Cleveland Cavaliers where he hit the shot in Game 7. And the almost unanimous opinion that he's the greatest NBA in-game dribbler to ever pick up a ball. His off-court respect comes from the players in the league, if not the fans. The fans tend to roll their eyes at Irving, recalling when he said that he believed that the earth was flat. His teammates, on the other hand, know Irving is a serious person, someone who argued that the league should not go into the bubble to play after the police murder of George Floyd. That the season should in effect be canceled. It was even revealed that he secretly bought a home for the Floyd family. Irving celebrates his Native American heritage, is paying close attention to the NYC DA race, and is also recently converted to Islam, fasting while playing, which by the way is amazing, during Ramadan. He's an iconoclast for sure, secure in himself and caring less about what people think than any athlete in memory. And even though he sometimes plays his sport with the look of barely concealed tolerance, as if there are numerous things he'd rather be doing. Irving joined one of the most exclusive clubs in league history this past season by shooting 50% from the field, 40% from three-point range, and 90% from the line. This is why it probably isn't surprising that of all NBA players who could be speaking publicly about Israel's bombardment of Palestine, it was Kyrie Irving who was. Several players have posted messages of solidarity with the Palestinian people, but none have taken the time, as Irving did, to put basketball in its proper place. None have planted themselves out there as an internationalist against oppression and a humanist who wants the violence to stop. In the same way that he wore an I Can't Breathe shirt years ago during warm-ups after the police killing of Eric Garner, Irving made it clear that his breath was also taken by the horrors of Gaza. At this presser, Irving said, "I'm not going to lie to you guys. A lot of stuff going on in this world, and basketball just not the most important thing to me right now. There's a lot going on overseas. All my people, they're still in bondage all across the world. And there's a lot of dehumanization going on. So I apologize if I'm not going to be focused on your questions. It's just too much going on in the world for me to be talking about basketball." He also stated that it's not just Palestine. It's not just Israel. It's all over the world. And I feel it. I'm very compassionate to all races, to all cultures, and to see a lot of different people being discriminated upon or against based on their religion, color of their skin, and what they believe in. We're all going to say we're human beings and we care and we're compassionate, but what are you doing to help? He then spoke at length about what he believes that we need to build, and it's a community which stands with unity and liberation. Irving ended his presser by challenging people to do just that, challenging people to stand on the good word of treating everyone with respect, compassion, and love. It was an emotionally stirring event. You could hear a pin drop as the camera clicks, and he was making his remarks. It also produced some wry smiles among the basketball. I'm too drunk to read that word. I'm going to admit it. I'm drunk. I'm a functioning alcoholic. We all know that. Let's go, baby. All season, Irving has been periodically fined by the NBA for not speaking to the press. Well, the sports world wanted him to speak. You wanted it. You got it. Irving is one of the most prominent, Irving is only the most prominent of a number of U.S. athletes that have been posting social media solidarity with the Palestinian people. In years past, this has been absolutely the third rail of sports and politics, with the silence being the response to war and occupation. And that is shifting. Influenced by connections between the Black Lives Matter movement, with its deep roots among NBA players and the Palestinian struggle, we are seeing a new internationalist consciousness about racism and oppression. And that is finding expression in the world of sports is a very dynamic development. But that Kyrie Irving is on the front lines of this shift is truly no surprise at all.
Yeah, I mean,
got through there.
I will say that, with the sentiments at the end, I think that's a little optimistic or maybe even idealistic. But overall, I think that that's a good piece about where Kyrie has situated himself, and there's also, for instance, he created a $2 million fund for WNBA players who wanted to sit out the last WNBA season of his own money, to my understanding. Basically this is where we talk about the risk. This is kind of what I was talking about. So if a guy comes up and says, hey, I'm against racism, I'm against sexism, I'm against, all this oppression, this and that and the other, that's one thing. But, when a guy says, hey, look, if you don't want to play, I'm going to make sure that you don't miss checks. That's another level. And I'm not suggesting that, Kyrie is anyway like an archetype for a new wave type of activist or athlete activist, because I think that there are always things that we can start to do that objectifies people and doesn't treat them as human beings that, are complicated and that have many interests, certainly someone on the caliber of Kyrie Irving does. But I am suggesting that there are ways that we can, not just on the NBA level, but people in their everyday lives, there are ways that we can talk about things, and then there are things that we can do, and so in some ways we're showing solidarity by posting stuff on social media, but in other ways it's like on our day-to-day life, like how are we practicing the revolution that we, believe is to come, or that some people are already saying is here? Like, how are we showing people what the next new world is actually going to be like? And I think that he is someone who has, worked through a real complex situation, coming in as I believe 19-year-old to now, where you kind of see that he's, kind of finding his footing, and it's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, facts. So let's see here real quick. Let's go, Mike. You what's your thoughts, sir?
No, I'm really happy with Kyrie's development. It's important. Sometimes there's often, you look at people through a fixed object, through a fixed kind of static lens in which you have an impression of them, and that always remains the same. So of course, Kyrie Irving in a lot of athletes' mind was most known personality-wise between his schism originally when he left the Cavs, with LeBron James, and of course he was given a label. And even though that has nothing to do with him as a person and his viewpoints, that sports kind of mindset of fans has an impact on how athletes are perceived, and it had an impact on how Kyrie was perceived. Even there was a legitimate, I feel, narrative to try to discredit his intelligence. I think the flat Earth stuff, I think that was like a method that was used to really use and amplify it. But seeing his comments, I think they were pretty good for Kyrie Irving, using that platform that he has to really talk about it, and bring awareness to it. I think, my take on athletes is all kind of like what we've always have talked about on this podcast is you have to judge them like you would judge any regular worker who works at any job and is getting paid to do some type of labor. They're paid to play a sport really good, and if they can't play it good, they're cut and they don't get paid anymore. But I think due to the deification of athletes, and rightfully so, how sports in general is used by the ruling class and the money interests that own it to project a certain set of values and whatnot, you kind of that'll always be a hindrance towards a lot of the consciousness of folks. It was even talked about with the younger players who didn't really want to go on strike. I think that's something that you see in the NFL. Like, the younger players aren't, they're the ones going to OTAs and not listening to the union. When the union tells them, OTAs are optional, don't don't use your labor when you don't have to for free. You know what I'm saying? I think that happens in every workforce. It's usually like the younger workers that the bosses use against the veteran workers. You know what I'm saying? In some capacity to to split the working class and to split the interests of people. So Kyrie's development, I mean, I think it's something to really be proud of. I mean, I think we are in an era in which, I think, we are, and I've said it since the beginning, Redspin Sports is an unapologetically LeBron James stan account, because like what he's done, and he rode the wave in a way that, I think is pretty phenomenal, pretty apolitical for a long time through his career, and was the best at his career. And then when he has the platform and stuff, now he can speak out on issues and speak out on cases so much that you have police unions openly trying to protest against him. You got like right wing calling him an apologist for the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, it's pretty dope. Like, I'm not saying he's a revolutionary by no chance, but he's greater than, given that. I mean, he's probably one of the greatest kind of athletic political icons we've had. It's even a Muhammad Ali, I would say.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, and the flatter shit will follow him, and that's fine, but like, who amongst us doesn't understand that skepticism is the pathway to at least ditching the status quo? And I would say most leftists, most activists, most people who woke up to the fact that they were, like, maybe this system is broken, the first thing that caught their eye and the first thing that quote unquote woke them up was probably some bullshit that they don't look back fondly on. But it was that first thing. It was that first thing that like awoke something in you to then seek something out. Like I mean, I just feel like how many prominent activists, and all of us, like I said, that first thing that woke us up is probably something that we go, well, I was wrong about that, but like, that's okay. Like, you move forward, you move past it. People will just call that shit out because they just want to shut you up.
And we say these guys are growing up in front of our eyes, right?
Right.
And so, you got, especially NBA players, if they're, if they're highly touted, they'll come in at 19 years old. And I think we're going to start seeing more come in at 18 as the rules change back, 17 and 18 years old. And so you got guys that, I don't think that it's fathomable the type of attention, the type of drains that are on these gentlemen as they are, and ladies and non-binary folks too, as they become professional athletes. The type of demand that's on them, and so I definitely think that we have to have, some level of empathy and understanding. And also, I think that when we're talking about sports, we're generally talking about the Kyrie Irvings and LeBron James and the Kevin Durant. And I think that that's something that we also need to realize, that most guys are not their profile. They're not in their tax bracket. They're not in their tax bracket. Yes, since they flattened everything, but they don't make the same amount of money. They don't have the same relationships with sponsors and partners. They don't have the same type of political influence. The average NBA guy is 4 years. The average NFL guy is 3 years.
Right. 2 or 3,
WNBA, they just changed their salary to where some more of them are making six figures than not.
Well, because they have such a short season too. I mean, that's the thing. I wonder, and that's imposed on them. I was doing I was researching, kind of the CBA that the WNBA was under for, I guess, the first 25 years. And, a part of the reason that they couldn't
that they had a problem with, investing in their own marketing is because 50% of all their revenue actually went back to the NBA. And so, as in most collective bargaining agreements in professional sports, the players earn a percentage of the kind of what you were saying when you bought Jacksonville Jaguars season tickets, right, Mike? That players earn a percentage of whatever the, playing revenue is. Well, the WNBA situation is where it came off the top. And so, you got a situation to where it's like, well, how do you grow a sport if you can't spend money doing it, right? And so I think that, when we start kind of looking at these folks, that's the reason why I look at it from the risk that they're taking, because, somebody speaking out like Muhammad Ali, and, he ended up basically losing 3 years. I mean, he got sentenced, he didn't serve, but, he lost 3 years of his prime. In a time where guys didn't fight twice a year, they fought 12 times a year, right? So how much money did he miss out on? How much, in the record books did he miss out on or whatever? But, let's keep it real. Muhammad Ali speaking out against the Vietnam War is not the same thing as, somebody saying, I stand with whomever or wearing an I Can't Breathe shirt. So we got to be real about that too.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know. What do y'all think? I mean, I feel like now that some of the people on here that aren't as familiar, it might be useful to show some of Kyrie's responses. I've been in the New York City area. We'll go through after we get through Joshua's piece here. I want to do that, but anyway, the big thing I want to say with Kyrie before we get into Joshua's piece and let him explain kind of what it's all about is that we have he's basically, they've been coming at him all year. And then the idea that the fans, it's like, I think he's brilliantly playing this strategically in the sense that he knows he's taking time off. He's injecting things into the discourse that should be normalized, right? And it's causing people to freak out. He knows that, right? He knows that in a lot of these, you hear the New York sports fans, the callers on sports radio and stuff. It's the outrage, right? Why are you not grateful, right? Roden talks about that a lot of $40 million slaves. The idea of being grateful for what? The industry that your labor and your work and your talent, your prowess is actually enabling, to be a thing. And then the other thing is that the idea that when he challenges the idea that you have to be so singularly obsessed with with the game, right? With the sport. It's also the idea that it's play. That's another thing that everybody's, I think, challenged in recent years is that this is not play. Athletic labor is labor, all right? And that by diminishing it as a form of play that everybody would just want to do. Look, this isn't your dream when you're playing out in the park as a kid. It's a big difference between wishing you had that lifestyle and being willing and able to put in and paying the price you got to pay for your body to be in a position to where you are good enough to have that, to have big capital like that want to sink money into you like that so they can extract value out of you. And it's these are all so many contradictions wrapped up in all this stuff. But anyway, it's I just think that it's really awesome the way that throughout this year, this is not just this doesn't just come out of nowhere. This has been an ongoing thing where he's been criticized he's just what's he doing? I heard it down on sports radio just the other day talking about, Bart Scott, which is, I like Bart Scott, but he said he made a joke that, I don't know with Kyrie, man. He's something happens around the world news. He might see, he might freak out, spin off, and go be hanging out in his teepee or something, kicking it. Just on ESPN.
What the fuck, Bart?
That's not okay. That's not okay.
He said that's what he said yesterday on ESPN New York. I mean, it hasn't even gotten picked up in the media, but because it's there's probably not many leftists listening to that, but I don't have right now. I don't have the Bluetooth set up in my vehicle, so I'm riding around listening to sports radio more often than usual in terms of
that's
what Bart Scott said yesterday. He said that you got to be careful because who knows if Kyrie he said literally I'm trying to make sure I don't say the wrong thing. He said Kyrie something happens at world events or whatever that and he feels a certain type of way. He might be taking a trip out to his teepee or something and sitting and getting his mind right or something.
But see, here's the thing, obviously
he wasn't even trying to be critical is what's wild. In his mind, he was just telling a joke, right? And I could tell it's because Bart Scott wasn't hating on Kyrie. It's sort of just they're joking around and he thinks it's funny. Like, you know,
he's just making a joke at an entire colonized people this land was stolen from's expense. Anyway, sorry.
I mean, so
but, Justin, I mean, don't. I mean, I'm just like, I'm not. You act as if like I'm talking about like the way in his frame of mind.
Yeah, I know.
I guarantee you, in his mind, the way it was like set up, the way it's like he wasn't even like. He wouldn't even know. Like he would be like shocked that people would be like he doesn't. I don't think I really don't think. And I'm not trying to be an apologist. Like it's totally fucked up. Like and it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
like,
but there's a lot of.
But I don't think he even like understand. I think like he's just talking about like being a hippie and kind of like he's gonna go out and take time to reflect or whatever. And like that's a problem. And just in and of that, the fact that there's like so much of like bullshit like that is like not even
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah. No, I get your point. I think
it's interesting to call out kind of what you were alluding to, that this is a part of kind of normal discourse.
Yeah.
Because like what we see, like people don't intentionally take chances. If anything, they're intentionally trying to say things that are popular. That's part of the reason why if you have a LeBron, everybody makes their career off of telling you like, how great LeBron is and trying to find new ways to give you an argument. So when you're talking to your friends, you can say LeBron was better than Kobe and Jordan. And so you're watching that show to find, like somebody who can give you that information or those talking points less than you are like people aren't tuning into these shows for like critical thought. You know what I'm saying? Like this is
not at all. Yeah, not at all, man.
So you're kind of trying to like strike the zeitgeist, you know what I'm saying? Like more so than you are like, and I think that's part of the reason why Kyrie Irving is such an interesting character is because, in this kind of like racial capitalist imperialist system, like it takes the individuality out of people. It's like it demands that you conform to a certain standard that is easily reproducible and recognizable, and that's easily monetized, And so I think what Kyrie Irving is saying is that, look, I might be bad for your brand. That's part of the reason why I think that at least the headline of that last story was correct, that what he is doing is remarkable.
Yeah. So anyways, let's transition right now into your piece, Joshua. So this is like on this was published back in February on Mogul Nation. And so you go ahead, man. Just tell me to scroll down when you want.
Sure. Just go ahead and scroll down. So basically, I wanted to do a retrospective on the NBA strike. I had such a hard time, but I decided just to write strike because I didn't want it to. I didn't want to appear cynical. Because, it really wasn't a strike. It was, guys were, in a bubble situation, away from their families, away from everything they know and love. And, meanwhile, there are police brutality and police killings happening on top of each other. And, I think
quick question. Do you think it happens at all without the Bucks? I mean, like to me, it's like if it weren't for the Bucks, basically with a catalyst. Would you agree with that, or what would you say?
Yeah, well, because there wasn't like a plan, what I'm saying?
And then decide not to go out, kind of like set everything else in motion. I mean, I don't know is that a fair way to characterize it? What do you think?
I think so. From what I've heard from different folks, it's not something that like there were talks. The Celtics, somebody like Jaylen Brown, was where they were in talks about like what type of action or demonstration or if they were not gonna play. But there were already guys there that didn't want to be there, and they were open about that. And so we shouldn't forget that. And so I do think it took kind of like somebody to jump off the porch, basically, to kind of make this whole thing happen. But we should not forget that the NBA immediately said the rest of the games were postponed, not just that night, but for the next several nights. Yeah. And so you just take that for whatever you want, but that lets you know that. There were a lot of considerations to be had as far as that's concerned. So if we get into this piece, like one thing that I wanted to make sure that to cover, it was a Black History Month type of retrospective, is that there is a history of athletes that are activists or that are, engaged in protests and actions or what have you. And that it's not just the Muhammad Ali's is, who we think, or more recently, Colin Kaepernick. There's history in the NBA, And so, sometimes you'll hear people talk about a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, sometimes you'll hear people talk about different folks. But, one thing that it's a little bit more recent is Chris Jackson, also known as Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, and Craig Hodges. And I think it's like when we're talking about setting the edge, I think that's kind of where we start looking at like what are the risks that folks are taking. So that's why it's interesting that when they brought up like Kyrie converting to Islam, similar to Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, like these are folks who are making conscious effort to engage in the form of tradition or spirituality that they believe is right for the world, and they believe that they're doing things, according to their, holy book or what have you, that promotes peace and prosperity, humanity for all folks. And so, it's one thing to have a certain racial analysis, but these are, men who, as adults, decided to convert because they thought that this is, the way, like a different way to organize human relations, so to speak, right? And that's what you have a lot of folks that convert to Islam. That's kind of what I've heard a lot of folks say, right? And so, okay. So you brought up Craig Hodges. I have no idea why everybody goes on Vlad, but they do. So I know we're not here to talk about that. We can say that for another day. So you got Craig Hodges, who is basically ostracized from the league because you see he's in that white dashiki meeting George H.W. Bush. This is during the Rodney King years. And, basically he hits MJ and hits Magic, and he's like, yo, we should sit out. We should not play this game. Right. And so in 2020, NBA players did not want to skip a game. At the end of the day, it was a regular season games that didn't mean anything. You know what I'm saying? This dude said, let's skip game 1 of the NBA Finals with Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, his book, by the way, I highly recommend. I'd love to get him on Redspin Sports. So
for sure.
If you're out there, Craig Hodges, we'd love to have you. I've talked about him so much early on. Mike was probably 5 episodes in a row, man, or something. But Hodges, man, was such an amazing shooter, 3-point shooter. I mean, he won multiple NBA 3-point shootouts, I think 3 of them in a row. But you mentioned Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, and I think that maybe you can summarize a little bit what he did. I mean, not just converting to Islam, but how he angered the establishment in this country.
He angered the establishment because what he saw was in the American flag a symbol of oppression, a symbol of domination, a symbol of racism, a symbol of hatred. And he's like, yo, my faith does not allow me to worship this symbol. And so people didn't notice, similar to how they did not notice Colin Kaepernick's, initial things, that, they didn't notice that he, didn't stand, with his hand. I don't think you have to have your hand over your heart, but there's a rule in the NBA that you have to stand respectfully or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And so he was like, yo, I don't rock with that. I'm going to stay in the locker room. I'm going to do this or that. And, basically they're like, no, you will stand. And he got fined and I think suspended for 1 game. And when he came back, the compromise was that he could stand with his hands held, as you saw in the picture. Consequently, he was, kind of embargoed from the league, so to speak. He was in contract year where he would, and honestly, he was lighting up the league. He was definitely before his time. So Phil Jackson said he was Steph Curry before Steph Curry. So if anybody needs a frame of reference, but yeah, if you go back and watch the highlights, I mean, the dude can play ball, and that was the thing, that Craig Hodges and Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf were both in positions where they still had a lot to offer, not just their teams but the NBA. And so that's kind of how you see where this stuff is such an interesting dynamic here. And so I said, hey, look, let's go through and let's analyze kind of how the players treat their own, because kind of to your point earlier, we're talking about folks that, honestly are in different worlds from us, and so it may be not a fair thing to judge a players based on what we do. you know. And so let's talk about what they do with their own. And I noticed that, you know, in each of these situations, we saw what happened with the NFL and Kaepernick, but what we also see now with with Craig Hodges and Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf is that other players did not rally around them either. Right. And they looked at them in a similar way as in like, hey, this is a toxic situation. You know, basically, you know, it has been said that Jordan and his agent basically told everybody, they kind of bullied everybody around the league, was like, yo, you better not bring, you know, Craig Hodges. And at the same time, there's a really great article on ESPN about Jordan being like this post-Cold War icon.
Yes.
So,
we got to find the link to that and share.
Yeah. And so, you know, they kind of get into this where it's always important to have a political, you know, economy kind of view of these things, because none of this stuff happens in a vacuum. And, you know, all these things are like there are multiple forces at work. And so basically you have a situation where Jordan is used in a similar way that, you know, Black artists were used in the 60s. You know, Paul Robeson, I'm sure y'all talked about him a lot on this show. You know, but basically when the United States could no longer use him as a, you know, like claims on him for a cultural bridge to say, hey, look, you know, this is how we, you know, how good we treat our Black folks. You know, they took his passport. You know, and so, you know, that's kind of what you see is that you have, you know, these folks, they'll fund you, they'll set you up on these diplomatic missions, they'll, you know, introduce you to the leaders of the world, to the richest people in the world, just so the United States could say, hey, look, this is how we treat. And if somebody if somebody has a problem with getting to this level, it's their problem. It's an individual problem. It's not a problem with, you know, they're talking about systemic racism, but it's, you know, how do you explain, you know, these athletes or these musicians or what have you? And so there's always like a cultural war going on. And the reason why I appreciate shows like this is because I very much so believe that, you know, most of the stuff that we deal with on a day-to-day basis actually flows downstream from culture. And a lot of times in left spaces, like, you know, we kind of abandon culture. You know, we like, you know, throw books at people and, you know, say, and all this I believe in, you know, to an extent, I think we should also look at what does it mean when people get their politics from culture, you know, when people's idea of what a hero is literally comes from superhero movies that are funded by the Department of Defense and CIA, you know, like, what does it mean, you know, when people's idea of race is, you know, comes from, you know, some dude that says, oh yeah, uncomfortable conversations with a Black man because he's a Black man that has access to, you know, media channels. Yeah. So I think that, you know, when we're starting to look at, you know, how these things impact, I do think there's work that needs to be done in sports, in entertainment, in culture at large, because these are some of the things. And so lastly, I'll wrap up with the Power Playbook article, is that we had, you know, basically Howard Bryant wrote something in 2017, I think, and much love to Howard Bryant. You know, he is someone who I think is definitely deserving, probably one of those unsung people who has consistently been a voice in, you know, certain spaces, especially when you're talking about race and politics. And he had a conversation with Carmelo Anthony, I believe, in 2016 or 2017, where Carmelo was like, you know, him, Chris Paul, and I think Dwayne Wade were on the stage of the ESPYs, and, you know, they were coming off this high, and they were like, see, we got the power. We could start our own league if we wanted to. And then just this last summer, Howard Bryant revisited that, and he was like, look, I mean, I hear you. And I think he admitted that he actually, you know, kind of sided with Carmelo. But then he took a step back and he says, well, how much power do you have if somebody can tell you, hey, look, you're not playing, and then that costs you your paycheck? You know, what power do you really have? And so I think that's kind of what was in many ways the impetus for this piece. But also, I think it's still the question. It's like, who has the power and under what conditions do they have the power and what do they have the power to do? And I think in sports and in communities, across the world, we have the power as people, but not as individuals. As individuals, maybe one can get rich and maybe one can, create a life that, maybe has some insulation from the bullshit. But I think, it does nothing for the collective. And, in a sport where you only have 400 professional players, I think there's still a lot of work that can be done to think as a collective. I mean, you even see with the collective bargaining agreement, it's very heavy towards the top players, right? Because you're in a salary cap situation. And so, all this stuff is very heavy towards the top players. They've always done some things that have helped kind of some of the bench players or some of the comer-ups, like, so you have the two-way contracts in the NBA. But when a guy is making, $40 plus million in a salary cap league with I think, what is it, like $130 million or so is the salary cap. I mean, that's, it's just math. It's just math.
No, thanks. Hey, Mike, you got to get you in, man. You got any reaction to anything? I'm sure you do that Joshua just dropped from this piece.
No, I mean, spot on analysis. I mean, I think the pivotal role that a lot of these athletes are playing and the historic role of athletes like Craig Hodges, who wasn't reported on. I mean, like Nate, we talked about Craig Hodges for an episode or two. I remember
maybe 4 or 5,
4, 5, 6, 7. Well, that was a big deal. I mean, especially this was when that also when that Jordan documentary came out.
Yeah, that's kind of when we started doing the show around that time.
It's Craig Hodges, So I mean, there's been a history of these type of athletes who've done this before, especially in the NBA. There's been a richer tradition in the NBA. I think, like you say, due to the smaller roster sizes, you're able to, I guess, the players are able to be more organized in regards to banding together and basically having more protection. So I think out of that, you may have NBA players more likely to stick their necks out, so they have guaranteed contracts and do a gesture, what I'm saying, as opposed to in the NFL, 53 times 32. I'm not the best at math, but it's just a more broader, bargaining unit, which means you got more competition at the bottom of rosters. And the owners are able to take full advantage of that to really drive down everything and drive down less protections for the new players. That's why even with this like NFLPA stuff, about the OTAs and stuff like that. Here in Jacksonville, they were talking about, Urban Meyer's, first OTAs, 100% participation, so it's like, like basically it's a new coach. So of course players are going to, come in and do more stuff, but it's also like, a breaking of that solidarity. I think that, the reason why the NFLPA was telling players to band together and not go to OTAs is due to the fact that football, these owners expect these players to be tip-top athletes 24/7, 365. So they're obviously expecting them not to get injured anytime they're doing any workouts. Why is it that when a player wants to work out and do the workout that the team wants him to do, but at his own like hometown or some other trainer, somebody he trusts, and he gets injured,
they won't cover it.
That's not a football injury. Right. And they're trying to feed, like, there's been so much, especially in regards to sports media, so much anti-NFLPA rhetoric around this OTAs. It's been really nauseating to hear like all this anti-union kind of, stuff.
Oh, yeah. Maybe like, Justin, when Mike, you're finished, maybe Justin, you can hop in on ESPN's ownership bias. But Mike, finish up, man.
Yeah, it's just been a total taking of the owner's side. It's like, why wouldn't the players want to come in and, practice there and not get injured? Why would you want to, spend time at your job when you're,
They
not
do set it.
technically.
They do set it up as like an incentive. They make an incentive in the sense, like you just said, like if you get hurt while you're at the facility, you don't run the risk of that. And that's like a way they use, like I think you accurately said, to make it materially like in your interest, like to go in. That's a great way to kind of divide labor up, right? I mean, I think that's fair. So anyways, Mike, we're gonna come back to him, but I wanted to just real quick, Justin's got to leave here, so I wanted to ask you about, have you heard about Adam Eaton's awful comments about minor league salaries, and also your take on ESPN
so
in terms of the ownership bias on the way out. So this is farewell to Justin.
And I also want to say that just let everybody know now, I will be out next week. I'm going to be driving to rural Virginia next Thursday, so I will also be out next week. But you can think of me as I'm driving through the West Virginia mountains.
There you go.
Yeah. I am putting together a larger piece right now. All I have is back to about 1996, but from now to 1996, I have not found one instance where ESPN has sided against ownership.
Wait! Is this gonna be your first Redspin Sports Patreon exclusive piece?
Yes, yes, it is.
And all right, in the pipeline.
So
I got one in the pipeline too. So we got a couple in the works.
It is astounding how anti-player the leading sports media network is. I mean, they are clearly they are beating everybody in every medium. And like I said, so 96 till now, I have not found one instance. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to go all the way back to the inception of ESPN on this. But I don't expect to find one. And if I find one, it's going to be in their first year, before they blew up and they saw how much money was here. But, I don't expect to find much. So I think we all know where ESPN's coming from. They don't side with players. They've always sided with ownership. And if it's from the small tropes, all the way up to blatantly giving owners medium. How many times have you seen Jerry Jones on ESPN getting to say everything he wants to say about his side? It's a full platform, but do they ever give a counter? Does the player ever get to counter? So it's what ESPN is. It's what they do. They're definitely not on the side of the player / worker on that. Adam Eaton, real quick, what he said a few years ago, last year, I'm trying to remember exactly what he said it, but he said that paying minor league players awful money and exploiting them was for the greater benefit. Now, this comes from a man who played in the minor leagues and was paid very little. But if you do a little looking into Adam Eaton never had to worry about money, because that's that same sort of thing. I wouldn't say that Adam Eaton was grew up upper class, but he wasn't born on third thinking he had a triple. He was born on second thinking he had a double. That's the kind of upbringing that Adam Eaton had. So for Adam Eaton to say, I went through this and you know what, I'm better for it, and all baseball players are better for it, when he didn't have to worry about money like other people had to worry about money. Adam Eaton's take on this is, he's that article you read about 28-year-old couple buys house and retires by 30, and here's how they did it with no debt. And then you read halfway down the article and you found that they had a trust fund and that they lived with their parents. And they're that's Adam Eaton. That is his life. He was always set up that way. So for him to have that take of exploiting these players, and the minor league minimum is, if you really think about how it's structured from single A through triple A, unless you're drafted in a certain position and you even get that guaranteed sign on, and even that guaranteed sign on is $1 million tops, but that's going to cover years of your life. That's not repeated. You don't get that again. And that's if you're top 200 picked. If you're beyond that, that's going to drop down to $300,000, and that $300,000 is going to be spread out over 4 years while you fight your way in on a $500 a week, only in the weeks you play. like a $500 a week salary. Like, and so for Adam Eaton to say, yeah, this is all good. This is all good for what, for all of us baseball players, absolute horseshit. And if you do a quick Google, you'll find serious articles that actually did more trying to repair him after that than criticize him and are critical of what he said. And that's that gross part, kind of like the ESPN always siding with the owners, right? Like, you're going to find more media stories that are like, Adam Eaton didn't really mean what he said. Yeah. What's the machine behind this? His agent was like, Adam, this is dumb. I agree with you, and you're right, but like, this is dumb, because that's what his agent didn't really disagree with him, but he told him he had to back it off. So he tried to walk it back, and then he said, I'm trying to remember the exact quote. He said some shit about like exploitation of people anywhere is bad. I mean, it's literally that generic. Like, I mean, I think we all know exploitation of anybody anywhere is bad, Adam. Like, why don't you elaborate a little bit more? He didn't, because that's all he could say. All he could say was like, yeah, exploitation's bad, you guys. But we all know how he feels, because he put his original comments out there. And he feels that exploiting minor league baseball players is better for the common good. And how is that any different than any right-wing trope where it's like, exploiting this is going to lead to this, or, hey guys, we're going to do this over here, but don't worry, it's going to get better for like this. None of that shit ever comes to fruition. It doesn't benefit anybody in the long run. Yeah, Adam. Yeah. Neil's comment. Yeah, that micro energy. Absolutely. Like, Adam Eaton has like big micro energy.
There we go. All right. So anyways, I think that's going to be Justin's. Anything, Justin, last thing. What's your take on the NBA season so far and predictions for the playoffs? That's the way out the door here.
You know what? Do you mind if I throw a curveball at your way out the door? Because I actually have something for Joshua really quick, because we don't get a lot of people from Atlanta right here. And I just want to bring this up really quick, and then I'll jet. So 2 years ago, playoffs, my Cardinals at the Braves, Ryan Helsley, Cherokee pitcher, first Cherokee pitcher on the mound, relieving in that game, sees the tomahawk chop, hears it. Next day, I don't even think he went. He definitely didn't go as far as he could have in his comments. I mean, I definitely thought he was subdued, but he just talked about breathing it in that moment and being there and watching what he called a bunch of drunk white baseball fans waving their arm and making this caricatured, song while he's on the mound. Yeah. And he just went,
you know what brought that to Atlanta, Justin?
Deion Sanders.
Yeah. It's
so it's one of those things that, like, his moment, all he said was, that was surreal. To be there in that moment, to be in that environment, and to hear that, you really realize, holy shit, like, this maybe needs to stop. He didn't even say this shit needs to end tomorrow, or else, like, we're all walking out, because he'd be the only one walking out. But, he didn't go that far. He just said it really makes you think how this needs to end. And everything that came back at him was, he needs to shut his mouth. This is ridiculous. Don't mess with tradition. And it's one of those things that, like, like I said, I've never even been able to, like, broach this with with somebody that's been on the show that's, from Atlanta. And just, like, was there a buzz around that? Like, did that even get, like what were his comments with, like, did the city react? Like, they made it seem like it was such a big deal that he needed to shut up. But I don't even know what the discourse was inside of Atlanta the day after something like that happens.
People were saying, you will never change the name of the Atlanta Braves, and you will never stop the tomahawk chop. And, like, it's basically futile even saying so, right? I mean, this is I mean, I don't know. I mean, the Redskins. I can't believe they are now the Washington Football Club, or
Hey, it's kind of like European football, though. Where you just get called like so and so Washington FC.
Yeah, right. It is. But I guess I never really thought that was a name that would last forever. I guess the Blackhawks, I didn't think that was a name that would last forever. I think the Braves name will go down with Major League Baseball, and that's the only way they'll get rid of that name.
Joshua, it's important to add to this real quick, though. You see the picture here? I'm going to show a quick view. That's Chief Knock-a-Homer. This is the logo, actually, right here. That the Braves. So the Braves actually, ironically, so they didn't have the tomahawk chop back then. Deion Sanders, who played at Mike and as our alma mater, Mike Florida State, played at Florida State and then brought that to Atlanta when he played for the Braves in the early '90s. But they had gotten rid of prior to that actually. This, who I think is personally the most explicitly insanely. I mean, a lot of them are offensive, but this is Chief Knock-a-Homer, there's Chief Wahoo in Cleveland. You see that? Long live the Chief. They're trying to save him, whatever. Not going to happen. But this white dude who would come out, of the center field, behind the center field fence, do a fire breathing that thing, do a whole running around TP dance and stuff. They got literally T-shirts like this. I mean, hipsters wear in Atlanta, and then
people wear that shirt. Now,
absolutely. And you see right here, there's Chief Knock-a-Homer. Oh, here he is right here. So this is just America, right? It is, and it's
the fact that we even say home of the brave, which is what the fuck is that supposed to mean in the context of what we took? And I don't know. I mean, what do we name all of our military planes? What do we name all of our? Oh man. Anyway, we can go down this road, and I don't mean to start that road, but I just wanted to bring that up because it's interesting because it's easy to have a perspective, and it's easy for all of us to have that perspective, but for Helsley to be in that position, being the first Cherokee pitcher, and all this time there hadn't been one. There hadn't been a Cherokee baseball player to be standing in that stadium, pitching in that, and then for everyone to go, yeah, man, you need to shut up. And it's the one person who probably has the most qualified perspective, not qualified opinion, but the most qualified perspective in this. Everyone's like, nah, man, this guy needs to shut up. It's crazy to me. But that's the history of exactly. But I got to go, guys. It's been a blast.
Peace, man. I appreciate you.
Like I said, I'm gonna be out next week, but I'll be back in 2. So
all right, appreciate it, Justin. Right on, this is 45 seconds, but I thought for viewers to really understand this history, this is highly offensive. So you don't want to watch it. It's fine. Yeah,
I gotta hop off as well.
All right, then I'll wrap with how much time you got, Joshua? Because I'm good to go
we're good for another 10 minutes.
Because all right, I got you because
you out, Michael, man. Hey, it was good meeting you, man, on the screen. Right on.
It's good to meet you too, bro. Happy I was able to chill with y'all tonight. I mean, even on this topic, quickly before I leave, I wanted to remark that Robert E. Lee High School in Jacksonville, Florida, which is named after the Confederate general. That name was voted to be changed, Nate. So I wanted to do that with you. That's kind of good. I think what you're right. You're 100% right on the Atlanta Braves as a name, never going down until Atlanta goes down or until the whole superstructure goes down because of.
With this name, Mike, they've also taken away the personification part of it. So now they're just we're just a little tomahawk. It's not they're trying to sanitize it, basically.
I mean, even that name as a mascot is still just very semi-popular.
Oh, yeah.
It still exists, even high schools in Jacksonville.
Terry Parker Braves. Yeah.
Terry Parker, used to have teams called the Rebels. The Confederate Rebels.
The Forest Rebels, and they're.
So they've changed. So they've changed that, but when it comes to indigenous, respecting indigenous history, and indigenous peoples, they're still kind of, not there, not there yet.
Not quite there yet. Yeah. I don't know. Joshua, you got anything you want to say? Ask Mike on the way out?
Yo, I can appreciate that Robert E. Lee story. So my mother grew up in Montgomery, Alabama, where there's Robert E. Lee, as there tends to be a lot of those throughout the South. And, that they made waves last year because some students decided to tear down the statue of Robert E. Lee, and now that name is changed. So again, these things don't happen. It's generally like what Fred Moten calls the undercommons. Like, these are the folks that are agitating, and people are like, we got to give them what they want, or else they might get a new world. So, I can never appreciate that.
See, this is actually real stuff.
The
We're
generals,
not just making this up.
The generals.
Right. I have this in the bottom of my closet, but that's a coaching shirt there. That was one.
Is that the mascot, the Generals?
Yeah, the Generals. Yeah.
Same with the one. That might be the mascot for every Robert E. Lee.
or the Rebels in Texas. In Texas, it's the Rebels. Midland Lee, but they're the rival of Permian, the team in Friday Night Lights is featured. But
crazy enough, like, people voted to keep Andrew Jackson High School, the name of Andrew Jackson.
Well, he was a loyal American, though, Mike. He didn't secede from the Union. And
John Rebout High School. And funny enough, that both those schools majority.
He was just a French explorer, Mike. He was just exploring, right?
A little bit, yeah. It was like, hey, nothing's here except me.
Right, yeah. Jean Rebout in Jacksonville. That was the white school, and that was and then before desegregation, you had, and then ended up being Raines and Rebout became black. But they're like, that's why they're only like a half mile away. For context, this is where Raines High School is where Brian Dawkins went, Lito Shepard went, Jabbar Gaffney. I mean, I can just go down the list. Rebout, the Lavernius Tolles, Travis Taylor, a lot of other guys. But yeah, but anyways, like, Mike, we appreciate it, man, as always, and
that's nice to meet you, bro. Nice to meet you, Josh.
Yeah, nice meeting you too.
Yeah.
All right. Peace. All right. So just the survivors here. So we gotta take it to the house here shortly. But I just wanted to F that. People can look up that racist crap if they want, but I don't need to play that for people. You get the idea. We saw enough of the pictures. But I did want to kind of get in with your thoughts on the Kwame Brown stuff before we wrap, because we talked about this earlier. So maybe I don't know, like, just I don't know. Just kind of give it. I'll play a little clip in a minute, but go ahead and just kind of give us the background. I'll play a little clip for the people. And then we'll kind of get into the larger issue with that.
So Kwame Brown has been someone who's been the butt of jokes for 20 years. I think what a lot of people say about professional athletes is off base. So if you go to your average YMCA, right, there's going to be some old guy who might be like 5'5", 5'6", and he has like all these different moves that he's like hooking on, like your arms, or like, he figures out he has this sweet spot he goes to, and he'll make the shot no matter how tall the person is guarding him or what have you. And we're just talking about like some, 50, 60-year-old guy that only plays in the YMCA on Mondays and Wednesdays, right? So I only say that to show that there are people that have skill that will kick your ass. Now, if you're one of the 400 people who happen to make the NBA, like, you can't be a scrub. Like, you can't be sorry. You cannot. And when you play, I think Kwame Brown played, 12 years in the NBA, right?
But Joshua, what would you say, just to play devil's advocate, to people that say, like, yeah, well, when we say someone sucks or they're a scrub, we're obviously not talking about, like, no one sucks in the NBA. But we're talking, like, relative to, like, NBA, like, standards. I mean, I think it's fucked up. I'm just saying, but that's something, that's the shit you hear a lot of times. And, like,
okay,
what would you say back to that?
I will say this. His time on the Lakers, were some rough years for Kobe. And I think it's fair to talk about, hey, look, somebody's performance, right? Mm-hmm. But I think the way that people try to, kind of assail their character, I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier. I think that's where it gets off base. It's fair if you're a performer, like a part of performance, any performance. I really believe in this, is that anybody can be critiqued and you should be critiqued, right? Yeah. That's a part of the conversation between performer and audience. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think what's happened is with Kwame Brown's situation, stuff has kind of been amped up from people outside of a scenario in which 20 years ago we didn't have access to.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably a part of the thing where we got to remember. I think Kwame Brown was, I think 2001 is when he was drafted. I was in high school.
No. Yeah, and I remember he was committed to the Gators and Billy Donovan actually, and it was a big story because he's in the Jacksonville media market, Southeast Georgia is, and it was the whole then him getting drafted by Jordan as he was in charge of the Wizards and at the time, and that's the whole interesting story. Is I just got done with William Roden's $40 Million Slaves, a book that everyone should read if you really want to understand the essence of this. Like, I mean, I know you just mentioned Joshua earlier about him being one of your kind of idols in journalism, and understandably so. He's a giant of a man, really, and he's actually. I wanted to make this point. One of the things I was going to read from, maybe this is the best time to do it right now before we get to Kwame Brown, is from the Craig Hodges piece. I mean, Roden actually had a role indirectly, and well, you could even say directly, in at the end of Craig Hodges' time, because what happened is after a game in the 92 playoffs, or maybe the 91, 92 playoffs, he had made the pledge after like the 91 deal, where at the NBA Finals, like you mentioned it earlier, you alluded to it with he approached Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan before the game about shutting it down, and because of Rodney King. And they basically laughed their ass off, I
forgot about that.
Yeah,
he could, and also I forgot that he connected with Ron Karenga.
Right, yeah. Oh, yeah. But yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I forgot about that little piece of trivia.
That wasn't even what I was trying to say. But one of the things it was, I'll tell you what Magic Johnson said. He goes, man, you crazy, Hodge. And then Michael Jordan's direct quote was like, man, that's extreme, man. Like, so that wasn't happening, but. But also the sad thing with Hodges is like when he didn't have he was at a time that was really like the low point of like athlete activism. It was like after the wake of the Reagan era, his vice president was president at the time. I mean, it was like the Soviet Union had just fallen, so you had like the whole, end of history, triumph of capitalism and all that stuff was like the dominant narrative. And you had the Jordan type mentality around, kind of being apolitical was in vogue. And so Hodges, it's his tragedy. Like he's a tragic figure in the sense, like when he was, ready to organize and be active, it's like the movement was just like not there. He didn't have the movement backing, that, thankfully grew, but has been able to come out and keep Cap relevant. Because I think partly when we look back historically is that I think what's powerful about Cap is that he wasn't just going to like agree to come back to the league on any terms, right? He was not going to be like, because like the only way he could have gotten back into the league, I believe that, but with a lot of strings attached, right? And that was a trade-off there.
I think you're probably right. Let me ask you this now. What do you think about the criticism of Kaepernick? Because some people are saying like, I mentioned Kaepernick's ice cream with Ben and Jerry's, and he's got a deal. He kept his deal with Nike. Actually, Nike figured out a way to use that and to kind of commodify his image with the afro and the fist.
Right.
So like, what do you think about those things?
I mean, I think I don't love it, obviously. I mean, given my politics, but I'll say this: I think that there's bigger fish to fry, and I mean, I think that we got to just like try to hold him accountable and critique like if things change and he becomes like starts taking bad positions on questions of like foreign policy and imperialism and all that. But I think as long as like we're in this system, it's like he literally like lost his career. I mean, so it's like I have a little more tolerance for it in the sense of like, I'm sure, like, can we critique it? Should we critique it? Yes. But should we also like make it seem as if like Cap's just a fraud? Everyone, I mean, like a lot of people like, it's a lot easier to make decisions when you're not in someone else's shoes, and you don't have people relying on you. You already gave up, like, he gave up his career, like on principle. So I don't know. I mean, it depends on how things go going forward. I'm not saying that like but on it by itself, no. I mean, I don't think it's like it doesn't diminish Cap in my eyes personally.
I'll mix it up a little bit. I think people are a bit idealistic. From that standpoint, I think you have a situation where somebody, as you said, lost their job, lost a lot of income, but lost a lot of he lost the stature to be able to make the knee that pissed everybody off for years.
Right.
And still, it's still to this point, right? It's a lightning rod issue, unlike Tebow's knee. And I think what we need to do is, kind of raise the consciousness away from individualism or individuation, however you want to say, where there's a singular person who stands out as an icon and who is a symbol, or a bastion of, some form of like something that we can project our politics onto. And I think that, for the people that are like, hey, look, I don't like the way that Kaepernick has, monetized. Well, I won't make a value judgment on that because he's given his own money, his own time. He's made his own sacrifice. But the number one thing he does is he mostly stays out of the way. And so a lot of times what you have is, the celebrity factor being used to detract from the issues on the ground. And I don't know that we've seen Kaepernick stand in the way of people who are on the ground, who are making things happen, who are not recognized. Like, to my understanding, Kaepernick is very much tied in, with those people. And it's not an easy thing to get to him. And I think that we should think about that when we're making folks. So one thing I've said on another show that I think is worth repeating is that a lot of times we the public, especially people that have any type of politic or consciousness, we participate in this, sports game and celebrity game or what have you. And then, we help build a platform for these people. We talked about Cam Newton a little bit earlier. We're the ones that lifted him up. But then it's like, then we're mad at him for not doing what we want him to do. And it's like, on some level, when do we start and say, hey, like, what is our role in this, right? What is our relationship to celebrity and symbolism and, and these types of things where we are projecting things onto other folks and other, other interests outside of ourselves, where it might be the easy thing is to say, hey, I stand with Kaepernick. But the hard thing is to say, well, how does that affect me and my job with the people that I work with? Right? And what are because when Kaepernick did that, this was at a time where, Black people wouldn't even say Black Lives Matter, And, I'm not trying to use that as like, some type of Rorschach test or what have you. But, just to kind of give context to the environment that what Kaepernick was in. And so I think that, a lot of times what I want to do is use, sports and culture as a way that we reflect on ourselves more so than project on other people, whether we are judging whether they're doing the right thing or not. To be quite frank, when you look at who gets elevated and who is able to, kind of take over the top positions in any form of like media or culture and entertainment, more likely than not, they're, either they don't have a politic or it's not good, And so we need to start there. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna read a few things off of here real quick from the piece, and I know you got a rule, so we'll have to save Kwame Brown for later, I think. But basically, I think we talked about it. It's full of contradictions. I mean, his critique of like some of these talking heads and the way they tear down Black men, I think has validity to it. I mean, he's clear that he is hurt by stuff, but it's like he's a perfect example of like the cat who like hides like a lot of like there may be insecurity and like by being hard. You got to have that like hard veneer, right? Or else if you don't, it's going to be perceived as like, people are going to catch you slipping and like you can bet on that. That's going to happen. And like, if you don't, so that's the world that like, so Kwame, like, he's not going to come out and like, but I think that the biggest thing you got to push back on is like, he constantly just calling guys effeminate and like, just equating like, the feminine with like being weak and being like, someone you can't trust at all. But that's the part that needs to be pushed back on.
Well, that's a part of the reason why people are, kind of tuning in, because he's, calling Matt Barnes Becky with the good hair.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of times, like we've created a scenario in which these things are even discussed because for whatever reason, like I mean that whole thing was just it didn't have like we didn't have to give it so much attention. And you see, he's created a YouTube off of this. I don't know, what he's planning on doing with this, but
let's give the people a quick snippet of it, so they know what we're, at least we're talking about. Because like I can see some people that are just mildly interested in sports and are leftists being like, "What the hell are they talking about right now?" This is the latest one. We're obviously not going to listen to 27 minutes of this, but so we haven't heard this yet, by the way. So this could be absolutely insane. Streamed 5 hours ago. Maybe you have. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I can't keep up. He's doing too much.
I mean, it's like he's on speed or something right now. You know, he's just like, oh, another video. You know, it's wild.
I don't think he's ever had this type of attention or control over, like, you know, or a semblance of control over his own narrative. So
yeah, you're right. Yeah, that being the first overall pick, he was like, and then the whole Jordan thing. It's clear he mentioned some stuff earlier today that he was abused. I mean, but I think Jordan, like, absolutely, like, you know. I think it's pretty safe to say that no one would know about Jordan that he dealt, like, that there was harm done to Kwame Brown, like, you know, as a young 18-year-old impressionable cat, like, coming up, by just the way in which, you know, by having this figure, larger than life figure like Jordan, like being the one that's in this dominant role in your life like that.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead and play the video, because we can go deep into some capitalism talk. But let's just watch the video.
What up, everybody?
What up?
What up, Kwame?
Hey, man, am I crazy?
I don't know, Josh.
So y'all gonna let these people not talk to me? They just gonna talk about me.
That's how it works.
Everybody that's talking about me now, they're getting all the sports writers. Everybody that's doing a reaction on my video. Most of the men, some of them cringe because of the curse words. They're not used to that.
Oh, and by the way, Kwame Brown was like the number 1 overall pick, in 2001, the 2001 draft, I believe, and by the Washington Wizards, and was one of the most highly, you know, touted, most heralded high school recruits in a long, so obviously be the number 1 overall pick out of high school. This was like 2 years before LeBron was picked. For context, he's out of, you know, the same county where Ahmaud Arbery was gunned down last year. Glenn County, Georgia, Southeast Georgia, near Jacksonville, Florida. So that's just a little context. He ended up playing 10 years in the league, but is widely considered to be a bust. And part of this whole discourse, you know, Joshua and I are having, is based on like the language used in corporate media and the profitability and like the way this kind of stuff sells when you use words like bust and trash and garbage and stuff like that, and how that trickles down to, like, you know, youth league ball and, like, high school kids, they emulate that stuff. So anyways, that's a little background there.
So it scared him a little bit. And then the other dudes who do a reaction, they're painting this narrative of he's a sad kid, he's been abused, and
I guess he's calling me out.
Gully TV talking about y'all leave him alone. Hell no, nigga, don't leave me alone. What the fuck you talking about? I'm having fun. Why would you want?
Yo, you got to react to that, Joshua. That fits right on what you're saying. Like, he's just, I don't have to slow down. Like, I'm having fun.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that, I mean, I noticed these even growing up, right? If everybody agrees with you, it doesn't matter how extreme your action is, like, you know, it's accepted, right?
Right.
But, you know, this ties in everything that we were talking about, even with Kyrie Irving, you know, and what have you, is that whenever, and this is, I think, how capitalism shapes the way that we relate to each other. Because anytime somebody does step out of the norm, it is like, okay, well, first of all, that there's something called a norm. But anytime you make a step to the left or to the right, you have a position to where, people are like, what's wrong with you? And it's just like, well, you know, maybe you just decided you wanted to participate as well. That's how I was looking at it. Like, I mean, these guys literally do this every day. And so because Kwame Brown does it himself, and, you know, obviously he was a little sore from being the butt of a joke, but still, because he's doing it himself, he's the problem. And I just think that's folly, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Also, don't let me forget before you bounce. Make sure to, like, kind of plug and tell us a little bit about what's going on with Black Power Media and some of the discussions going on. So let's finish listening to the video real quick. But in case my I don't know, insomniac self and my brain's bouncing all over the place forgets at the end, I just wanted to drop that real quick.
leave me alone, Gully. Would you want the views?
I'm sorry. He keeps remember that's a perfect girly, feminine. It's like that's the thing. It's like if it wasn't just for like the intense misogyny, which a lot of times it's like a way. Sadly, having played with so many guys and stuff like you do have like the athletics. It's like there is like this hatred of the feminine or this idea or just violent language. And you talk about like women and stuff like that. It's like that is, I think, sadly, is one of the things that is prevalent and. In certain circles in sport,
Yeah. Well, so I definitely think that there are instances and expressions of that, and sometimes these are very domineering type situations where the power dynamic is imbalanced, right?
Yeah.
I think that we also must recognize this is why that we should be bringing all people together in organization and organizations, because that's the type of stuff that you work out by working together and struggling through things together. And I think that a lot of times, I've even experienced this myself. There are some instances where, you may be not welcome, as a Black male or what have you, or you're, supposed to fall back. And I think that there needs to be a re-embrace of people who say, hey, look, this is kind of what we are doing together. And yes, you are, horrible on that situation. But I think that's kind of the point of collective acting as a collective and not an individual. Because I think the fact that somebody has problematic views is not a problem in and of itself, right? It's a problem if that problematic view becomes emblematic. Yeah, I think that's kind of where that's where we need to start working that out, because we all started somewhere. Justin kind of alluded to that a little bit earlier.
No, absolutely. So let's finish watching a minute or two of this. Yeah,
I'm getting right now, huh? Don't leave me alone. Keep fucking with me now. I'm your Huckleberry. Do it sound like I'm crazy, motherfucker? Keep fucking with me. Shit.
My G.
I'm used to getting paid while y'all fuck with me.
See?
But I noticed, though, instead of calling me crazy, how come no one challenged what I said about any other points? How come Charlemagne the God, bleach face ass, ain't in somebody cuffs yet?
Shots fired, man.
How come Charlemagne the God ain't in somebody cuffs yet? And DJ MD, how come why is this nigga even on TV? This nigga just walk like a broken, defeated man. He just walk like his wife kick him in the ass every morning before he leave out the house. Get him nigga a hug, give him a kiss, soon as he turn around and go out the door, she kick him in the ass.
Man, that's almost as bad as Dame Dash.
Whoa. You talking about leave me alone? What the fuck?
He's just warming up, man. Holy.
Who next? Come on.
And so y'all know, Josh, this is the first time we've seen this one. Right?
You nuts. Shit. Thank you for everybody who hit the super chat. Hit that cash app. I appreciate y'all.
Hey, by the way, y'all should hit the super
chat. They hating on me, boy. I'm crazy.
What's up?
I said, by the way, y'all should hit the super chat for Nate and Redspin Sports.
Yeah, like we gotta get it up there. It's like we're not monetized yet, but it'll.
Oh, okay.
But I will say this, I appreciate it, and like you can hit us patreon.com/Redspin Sports. I mean, I've been putting more stuff up on there. I try to. There's the only exclusive thing that's not public right now that's still available. That's on there. That is Radio War Nerd is a big podcast. It's one of the bigger ones on Patreon. It hosts like 5,000 monthly subscribers with Mark Ames and John Dolan, Gary Brecher, who wrote for The Exile when they were over in writing about post-Soviet Russia in the 90s and the neoliberal hellscape that was. But dang, I'm starting to lag here a little bit. Yeah, check that out. The interview we did on identity and sports and sporting communities and the connection to war and and historical. And so, I mean, there's nobody I've heard that have a wider, more comprehensive knowledge of insurgencies and revolutions and military history and whatnot. And the pen name Gary Brecher for a lot of years, and has some of the most astute. I mean, he would literally call out like predict things in advance. Like, he would see the way things are working. The Iraq War is a great example. Really, before anybody else, he really broke down exactly what was going to happen with like the Bush administration and the connections and to what their goals and objectives were. And so, anyways, that's a little plug I'll put in there. But we're going to be having a lot more stuff come out here in the near future, and keep growing it. And that includes writing on Patreon. You heard Justin mention a piece he's working on now, and I got one in the works too. So just and keep feedback and let us know stuff you're interested in having us do. That's we all work full time, so it's not like I'm just like a YouTuber at home all the time just doing this. Is my main gig. I work in public education and got a lot of it kind of takes up some time. So, anyways, enough of that. Let's get back to Kwame real quick, another minute or so at the most, and then we'll move on.
My family full of killers, all kind of dumb shit. Now, Charlamagne, that's kind of unfair, sir. It's kind of unfair, sir, just because you like these people. You talking about somebody in my family that I didn't raise up around did, but you won't talk about what Matt Barnes did. This psycho son bitch jumped the gate at his house where he wasn't welcome, Matt. He was fighting in front of his kids. A little angry, stupid motherfucker. He just challenged me to a boxing fight after he said we was joking. So at least if you was being objective, Charlamagne the God, if you saying basically you was just putting out the information, which I don't know how it has any relevancy when I never said I was gonna do nothing to nobody. So how what my daddy did and what my brother did had anything to do with anything. And guess what, pussy? The Wizards.
Oh yeah, I just hit that subscribe button. I'm gonna, for better or worse, I got.
You gotta subscribe, right?
My daddy was in prison in 2001. You stupid son of a bitch. You think them people gave me $12 million without knowing that? So that's much sensitive. I told you.
Yeah. Go ahead. What's your take on that?
Yeah, there's nobody that's playing professional sports that they don't know the in and out of your life, and that's part of why I think what's going on in Texas is so interesting. Not to start a whole new topic, but the Houston Texans quarterback situation. That's all.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. That would take. I mean, I could go on for that. I'm sure you can too. We both could. That would be a whole nother podcast. We could do on the Deshaun Watson. Honestly, if we wanted to. Like, I know both of us could.
Yeah. So there's just nothing about you that they don't know. And if you saw that Aaron Hernandez documentary,
everyone should watch that, man. Yeah. I mean, really, I'm just like it's a mind fucker, man.
Yeah. I mean, I can't lie, man. I was pretty pissed that Urban Meyer was on there, basically looking like good Christian man. And it's like, bro, you rode the wave,
right.
and you probably enabled it. And they definitely got situations where, like, I mean, these guys are more powerful than mayors. The freaking, a college football head coach of an SEC program.
I mean, think of Nick Saban. I mean, especially. I mean, it's just like. He has way more power than any politician in Alabama. And
Tommy Tuberville won.
Tommy Tuberville's a damn senator, and I've talked about that a lot on By Any Means Necessary as that was happening. I think with Jackie and Sean a few episodes because it's so mind blowing. I mean, this guy built a whole career as a head coach at mainly Ole Miss and then successfully at least at Auburn. I mean, they got screwed over in 2004. I don't know, with you the way that Oklahoma got in that game. They were with Cadillac Williams, Ronnie Brown, Junior Rose Green. They had a lot. Jason Campbell at quarterback. There were. I mean, in the secondary, they had some Carlos Rogers. I know.
I forgot about Carlos.
Yeah, they were. You had Carlos Dansby. Dontarius Thomas. I mean, they had some ballers on that squad. Junior Rose Green. And there's Courtney Taylor, I don't know, whatever. Anyways, but still, the point is, he built all this success, man, with overwhelmingly black labor, and then you hear his campaign rhetoric, and you realize who this guy really is, and how. I mean, I heard some of his former players talking about it. It makes you question if everything the dude was, everything he said was just complete bullshit. I mean, it's like he's like a polished salesman type.
Yeah.
And, that's exactly what he is. He's a hustler, but a hustler who can play the sort of high society game that he's like a, sort of that, fancies himself of being like that kind of genteel Southern, leisure class, that's able to that's achieved enough material prosperity and stuff that really they kind of proudly see themselves as the sort of the posterity of sort of the plantation aristocracy. Even though I'm not. Sure. Whether they are or aren't, it's not really relevant. It's like how they've imagined themselves, like through the mythology of the lost cause, through the mythology of and how they convinced themselves, a lot of them, that slavery wasn't the core issue. And then they'll dilute their minds. I've heard this so many times. The whole our family, treated our slave. The idea, even the idea of if someone is proud of the fact that the slaves and their family weren't treated as badly as some others. That just tells you everything you need to know.
Thomas Jefferson didn't treat his slaves poorly.
Well, I mean, he got that a little, had a lot of extracurricular activities going on there. But
look, I mean, we could play this game, but it doesn't.
But real quick, what's sad though is how is anything, and even if it's technically Sally Hemings says yes in the moment, I mean, can you even do you even have the ability to have consent, when you physically own somebody, so that's a whole other thing, right? Yeah. Whether or not he was forcibly or not, that's the
theory, I don't know what you would call it. I guess the idea that I would go along with, that I've heard and I agree with, is that when somebody purports to own you as a human being, you can't you don't have the ability to consent to anything.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, so it's by definition rape, and so it's that's the whole thing. It's that's why romanticism and shit can fuck your mind up,
Well, it's treat you well. It's goddamn, I have a friend who has a horse ranch. He treats his horses well. What the fuck are you talking about?
Right. Yeah, it's it's crazy though in American, for a while in American culture, and you saw this in media representations too, that was almost seen as this sort of Romeo and Juliet style, sort of forbidden love. That's as if true love is trying to break through the harsh reality to the world, as if he's not a direct part of that very system that some idiots that act as if I don't think, thankfully we've evolved, but you look back at representations of discussions and discourse and on that, it was almost not seen as even from liberals and stuff, and for what it was, which is rape. It's there's no idea that it's an example of some humanity shining through the darkness of slavery, and the evil of it. I think one of the great things, and we have made gains in our culture in the last 10 years, the activism is a big reason for it, is that it's, forever, just pushing back and obliterating these, just notions of just bullshit notions that are just racist and have been systemically just sort of uncritically accepted. And that's the whole irony of the pushback from the right on cancel culture is they're mad about being canceled when really it is democracy at its essence of people saying, no, we're going to correct historical errors. We're going to correct the things about the past that are just that are fundamentally distorted and misrepresented. And we're going to do that. And we're going to, call shit out for what it is. It's the evils of slavery, the fact that, any kind of, there's nothing to be romanticized at all about, I got you, Josh. But I was just saying, I think that's the power of the movement has been, it's about the power to define reality. Who has the power to define, what things are? For almost a century, the United Daughters of the Confederacy had the central role in organizing curriculum all throughout the South. So you even had this passed down to black schools, the old textbooks. I even saw one, and I found an old Civil War book the other day. I brought it home, and I brought it home just to look at because it's at at the school where I work, and because the stuff it was saying about Lee, this was published in the 90s. Even we're still supporting the old lost cause BS, where it's he hated slavery personally, but he just went along, and he wanted to free his slaves, but he just had to side with Virginia. He couldn't raise his sword against his home state. No, that's actually all. I mean, I heard that stuff constantly growing up, but it's like that's all bullshit propaganda that was carefully crafted as part of this larger ideological effort that was the Lost Cause, that like is responsible for so much of the just complete, just ignorant insanity that you hear from people. Like, when you realize it comes from like a position of power. It's been like pushed, and it's been created. It's been a narrative that's been created to distort what the Confederacy was and make it into some abstract notion of Southern pride, right? And then you have the UDC pushing these things that make it seem as if like they're able to axe any editions of textbooks that don't refer to slavery for what it is, and instead kind of like distort that and like completely obfuscate it what it is. So anyways, I'm sorry, man, I'm kind of going
that's all super great points, and the only thing that I'll add to that is that's why we must do what is required of us. Those people who have a certain type of politics, those people who have a certain type of consciousness, those people who are looking forward to creating a world that's different and new, and that's more egalitarian, and that is a situation where there aren't classes. Where I think that's where you have to say, I have to take a step beyond posting in my Instagram stories about these things, that we have to do stuff, and maybe you're doing something is you're making Redspin Sports, like maybe you're doing something is you write novel, whatever the situation is. I think that we must all take up in our own space, we must all take up our cause, because it's not this stuff is not neutral,
right? And even if it's
just not.
Even if it's just supporting, like, work that's going on in your community, like you don't have to be the one that's going like build something all on your own, or like taking on like, publishing articles or videos. I mean, that's great. Like people should do what they can, but it could be, everybody's got a role. They could be, providing rides to people, right? Helping to like,
that's an underrated point,
right?
Yeah, that's it. So what I noticed is that a lot of people say, "Oh, nobody's doing this, or nobody's talking about this,
right,
and this and the other," right? And the reality is that you can pick a community. In a community, there are people doing stuff that you've never heard of. Like, I mean, I know some people here in Atlanta that have these, organizations. Some of them, just dozens of people, and you'd be surprised what they do with so few people, so few resources, so little budget. And what's required is that.
Hey, Joshua, I gotta. Maybe this is a chance to talk about BPM, because I know some of the cats you went on.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think they do a lot of work, right? The Renegade Culture guys.
Yeah. So Kamal Franklin, community movement builders, based in the Pittsburgh neighborhood of Atlanta, Georgia. They're really strong anti-gentrification, but they have theories that are kind of how I look at it, kind of scientific approach to things, based on history, and that's what I'm not sure if how different folks' politics are that listen to this podcast. I presume fair, like left, like for real left, but that's that's kind of how they approach it. And so they have these he has these organizing spaces here in Atlanta, Detroit, I believe Dallas, and it's not asking for the right to self-determination, but actually doing, and I think that that's a powerful thing when you have community gardens, and you have food pantries, and stuff where you're actually taking care of these people, where you're helping people, through like code enforcement and through different things, like where you're actually, you're not sitting back and a lot of times we have the tendency to outsource to politicians, outsource to the local, neighborhood leader or something like that. But I think it's time for a participatory, community type of base thing,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like, and I was just, gonna try to kind of wrap it. I mean, I think that what BPM is doing is powerful. I mean, I can give them a plug. Sorry,
I should have given them a better plug. So Black Power Media, it started a few months ago, and basically what they want to provide is something that's an alternative to Black-owned media that tends to be, I guess, if you want to call it, professional managerial class type folks, right. But, really it's people that have found their position in a neoliberal media landscape. Basically Black Power Media is like, hey, look, we're going to, provide an answer to that for folks who, we don't have enough news sources. We don't have enough firsthand reporting and journalism, and we don't have enough analysis and commentators that are giving us international news in a way that is devoid of the propagandized United States State Department bullshit. Yeah. And so I think Black Power Media, they have, really interesting shows
Jackie Lukman, because I go on with they hit
shout out Wednesday, right? Wednesdays, is that you?
I'm on every Friday. So
I'll be
on. We record during my lunch break, and then it's on in the 2:00 hour by any means necessary. Radio Sputnik with and it airs on AM FM radio in Washington DC and in Kansas City, Missouri. So if you're in the Washington DC area or Kansas City, you can hear me live on the radio there with Jackie Lukman and of Black Power Media and Sean Blackman. So it's what's their website? You talking about what?
Black Power Media.
Oh yeah, you can put that in the chat.
So yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
All right. So appreciate that, Neil. Neil's up in repping New Brunswick, Maine, up there. So Radio Sputnik. If you Google Radio Sputnik, it's it actually doesn't come up first, but it's on the first page. So it's like it is sort of crazy how the story of NPR that says like state-run Russian radio looking to expand the U.S. comes on before the actual SputnikNews.com. So that lets you know right there, information warfare that's going on in this country.
At some points, things have to be funded, right? And I think that what I generally defend is, especially when they're talking about like is China colonizing Africa or whatever. I think the first point that I always bring up is that is a question. Do people have the right to decide for themselves? A question of self-determination. And that's the thing where I think with the capitalist political economy, a lot of things are decided for us. And so we have to
figure out ways, and generally you want to do things that are grassroots funded, if possible. But sometimes you got to get it in how you get it. But also I find it rich, how like these people that talk about like Russia state funded. I mean, how is state funded worse than corporate funded? That's all based on completely shielded. I mean,
Lockheed Martin is state funded. Yeah, Tesla is state funded.
Of course, all these things are. They're state funded. To even put that they're state funded to such a degree that's so beyond anything that people can even comprehend. As
to the degree that there's no discernible difference between Northrop Grumman and the state.
No, absolutely. Just like people rightfully that are in countries that are being under the boot of U.S. imperialism, they don't see any difference between Israel and the U.S. because they're the same entity, right? So,
even in corporate media, that's why the headline is United States. Joe Biden approves $735 billion sale to Israel, right? It's that's I think emblematic of the way that these things are married together, right? Where there is really no distinction between Joe Biden approves it. There's no distinction of who is actually the person selling the goods, or what is the organization selling the goods? And if you looked at most of the reporting around that, it doesn't matter because it's coming, like you said, it's coming from our country and going to another, and that's largely the coalescence of the capitalist and the political class.
Poison the minds of people. Sorry, I'm just trying to put this last comment in here.
Oh, good.
So I'll just put on there in response to Neil. But the idea is since there's so much worse than corporate media reveals just how much neoliberalism is poisoning the minds of people on a mass level. I mean, grassroots funding is ideal, but there's just nobody talk to Jackie and Sean. I mean, there's no like, for Russia, it's all about soft power. It's no different than like why the U.S. has Radio Free Europe and Radio Free Asia and these like things. I mean, in fact, I think it's much more benign than those things. Those are straight spreading like regime change propaganda and all that. I think that the Russia, with the Russian Federation, I mean, just like BBC and just like France with that their channel 24, I think it's soft power, and of course they're going to want to like bring up and highlight realities of like racial injustice, oppression in the U.S. and things that are being ignored, or at least like not ignored in corporate media, but like framed in a way that's totally like meant to like you even hear the BS about like, oh, Russia's sowing chaos, as if like Black people and people of color and people that are oppressed people and throughout this country can't possibly be just upset on their own, right? And it's got to be because they're being like stoked by like Russia or something. Or
I mean, that's something that's like 100+ years old. That red scare bullshit, right? And so I think that we have to always be on the lookout for that.
Yeah,
because I don't know if there is a 1954 Brown v. Board decision, from the Supreme Court, if there is no outside pressure from Russia, I don't know that there is any of the litany of civil rights bills that were passed. Like, I don't know if any of those things.
Hey, Joshua, I do know, and the answer is they wouldn't have.
There you go. Right.
Yeah, no doubt, man. So like, I know we're getting down to the end. I think the last thing I'll do here, and I just want to get your reaction to this. And I know you got to go. I do too. But is just read a little bit from this, the piece here that I actually put this in the chat here, but from Chicago Reader, because basically this is about following up on like Craig Hodges and basically how how he got blackballed from the league. I think this would be a good stopping point here. We hit on a lot of stuff. We might not have gotten into everything. We mentioned the NBA breakdown. Don't worry, there's plenty of that you can watch on ESPN, with NBA TV, wherever else you want to get your just normie sports analysis. Which look, we like doing too, but we only got so much time. Anyways, despite the trepidation of league officials, this is about Craig Hodges from ChicagoReader.com, about his book when it was getting released back in like 2017. Hodges was admired by his peers, according to Smith. It's like Sam Smith, the guy that wrote the Jordan Rules. He took on the thankless job of being the players' union rep on every team he played for. In the early 90s, Hodges advocated that players be allowed to tap into their pensions immediately after retiring, rather than have to wait until they're 45 years old. That would have meant less money for agents, who are paid a portion of what players earn in salaries. So Hodges' position put him at odds with some of the most powerful agents in the game. Hodges was so unafraid to stand up to teammates if he thought they were wrong. According to Smith, he was one of the few Bulls who dared to defy Jordan. Apparently, Jordan respected Hodges for it. Well, up to a point, you'll see. In one passage from the Jordan Rules, Smith recalls a locker room conversation in which Jordan criticized the reserves. I hate being out there with those garbage men. They don't get you the ball, right? I ain't no garbage player. Hodges told Jordan, I was playing in this league when you were still trying to figure out how to put your pants on. I wasn't talking about you, Hodge, Jordan said. More often than not, Hodges pressed Jordan to speak out, as he did in 1991 after the Bulls had made it to their first finals against Magic Johnson and the Lakers. And I mentioned that earlier. So basically, just to summarize, it was, he wanted to stand in solidarity with the Black community and call out racism and inequity. It would be a united front. The warm up is for game one. And then when the ball basically goes up in the air, walk off the court. That would have been wild for sure. But there was a precedent, and this gets like kind of what Joshua was writing about in terms of there's a whole history of this kind of activism. At the 1964 NBA All-Star Game, Oscar Robertson, Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, and other stars refused to leave the locker room to play unless the owners conceded the concessions on salaries and other benefits. That boycott worked. Players didn't leave the locker room to play the game until the owners agreed to many of their demands. But Jordan and Johnson brushed off Hodges. The boycott never took place. Michael said I was crazy, Hodges said. Magic said it's too extreme. So this gets really good now. The Bulls went on to win the series and capture their first championship. In October 1991, they were invited to the White House to be congratulated by President Mr. CIA assassin-in-chief, / VP, now President George Herbert Walker Bush. Hodges showed up to the ceremony wearing a full-length dashiki and bearing an 8-page letter he intended to hand to Bush. The purpose of this note, this is quoted from Hodges here. The purpose of this note is to speak on behalf of the poor people, Native Americans, homeless, and most specifically the African Americans who are not able to come to this great edifice and meet the leader of the nation where they live. His letter began. This letter is not begging for anything, but 300 years of free slave labor has left the African American community destroyed. It is time for a comprehensive plan for change. Hopefully this letter will become a boost in the unification of inner city youth, and these issues will be brought to the forefront of the domestic agenda. He gave the letter to Tim Hallam, the Bulls press spokesman, and asked that he deliver it to the appropriate White House staffer who would give it to Bush. Whether Hallam actually passed on the letter is unclear when it commented on it, but this is where the main thing I wanted to respond. So in 1992, Hodges returned to the Bulls, all right, as they successfully defended their title. After one game of the 92 NBA Finals, which they won against the Portland Trail Blazers to win for Jordan's second title, he opened up the New York Times columnist William Roden, who Joshua and I both mentioned, author, go get yourself a copy of $40 Million Slaves, but great journalist for before, write that book. And William Roden chiding Jordan by name for not speaking out more about injustice and inequality. So this is so Hodges basically, he had been trying to stay silent. He writes in his book the whole season because it was a contract year coming up, and he knew he was almost there, but he just, and I just respect him. It's at the end of the day, when it came up, when push came to shove, and you had all the stuff that was going on and Rodney King's killers, getting off, that he couldn't take it anymore. So he opened up after game one, and that's basically what did him in with Jordan. But he goes, the poverty in the city is so hellish. Just look across the street from Chicago Stadium. I just told Roden, then you have us playing in here. How much money did we make here last night? How many lives will it change? Wow, it's real. At that point in his career, Hodges was 32 years old. He'd lost much of his playing time to B.J. Armstrong, another reserve guard. In July 1992, a few weeks after the Bulls had won their second title, Hodges got a call from Jerry Krause, the Bulls general manager. He said, "Thanks for looking after the young guys on the team." Like I was a damn babysitter, Hodges said. Then he said, we're going to have to let you go. And just like that, after 10 seasons in the NBA, Hodges was out of a job. So you see there, members of the 91 team. But it goes on here talking about, kind of the history, what happened to him after that. But long story short, he was out of basketball at that point. And he spoke out. He couldn't, I think it's a powerful testament to at the end of the day, you are what you do, right? You are what you do. And I think that we can pretty much wrap now. So anything, last word you got, Joshua? I know we've kept you a long time, man. So I really, really appreciate it. And I have to reciprocate
No, all good, man. I appreciate being here, and I appreciate what you're doing at Redspin Sports. I appreciate your segments on By Any Means Necessary. And I just want to say, I don't think there's a problem for us to enjoy these things from an entertainment perspective, or from a sports perspective, or what have you. I think what we should be doing is looking at how a lot of the issues that come up because of the contradictions, like how are we analyzing them in our own lives, in our own selves, in our own communities, in our own workplaces, and so on and so
Right.
forth. And how do we model the new world that we want to see? So that's all I would like to leave with is, kind of just think about that. If you're listening to this, if you're watching this, think about, reflect on how you're modeling the new world that you want to see.
Yeah, and I think what you just said is powerful, man, because it's too often we're conditioned to just think that change has got to happen from up top. It's got to happen from some celebrity, from some athlete, and we get all disappointed, right, if athletes don't meet what we hope they're going to say, where we hope how far they're going to go. Kyrie's been a pleasant deviation from that recently. Jaylen Brown, guys like Justin Jackson of the Chargers. There's others too we should mention, but the point is, Joshua just said, it's about what we do in communities. It's about what people who aren't, athletes have a very specialized talent. I mean, a very limited amount of time to play that game. So it's not to make excuses for him, but it is to point out that, like, we got to stop always just looking up and thinking like that we're powerless. The system is designed to make us feel powerless, right? People on that, you know, we're all atomized. So if we're atomized, we got to organize, right? And so with that, Joshua, man, we appreciate it. And until next time, that'll do it for the live stream tonight on Redspin Sports. Take care. Peace.